Chair lays out House Bill 28. Chair offers up committee substitute to House Bill 28. Members, House Bill 28 is intended to help regulate the hemp industry in Texas by following the federal legalization of producing hemp. For a little background, on December 20th, 2018, President Trump signed the Farm Bill into law regulating the cultivation and production of hemp. Different from marijuana, hemp contains less than 0.3% of Delta-9 THC. Anything above this threshold is still a violation of federal law. After the passage of the Farm Bill, an unregulated THC market in Texas exploded. In the wake of this new market, many unsafe products were put in the hands of Texans, and most concerning, in the hands of Texas children. The unregulated products, oftentimes synthetic, can contain dangerous chemicals, heavy metals, and in some instances, even fentanyl. House Bill 28 seeks to create a regulated hemp industry that upholds the intent of the 2018 Farm Bill while protecting Texans from harmful products. You will hear many stories of individuals that have had extreme adverse effects of these harmful products, and because of the effects are most common with synthetic products, House Bill 28 creates an outright ban on synthetic THC. This regulatory structure will also maintain the federal restriction on THC of no more than 0.3%, as well as limiting the amount a person can buy in a single day to 10 milligrams. House Bill 28 intends to stop advertisement to children by making the legal age of consumption of these products 21, requiring an ID verification during the purchase, and by creating regulations on advertising. Additionally, we are banning all consumables other than drinkables to ensure that there are no products that can be mistaken for a child's favorite, such as gummies, cereal, or candy. The certification of allowable products, as well as the manufacturing process, will be regulated by the Department of State Health Services. This will include requirement for the products to be lab tested and for those results to be made available to any consumer. To ensure these products are kept out of the hands of children, we are placing regulations on the sale of these drinkable hemp products under the Texas Alcohol and Beverage Commission and requiring a three-tier system similar to how alcohol is regulated. House Bill 28 requires TABC to develop training requirements for those serving hemp beverages. Additionally, House Bill 28 is creating a tax and fee structure that is structured similar to that for alcohol. I anticipate this will generate substantial revenue for the state, and the funds are dedicated to not only TABC and DSHS for regulating the industry, but we are dedicating a portion of this funding to that fund will help local law enforcement enforce and combat the narcotic opioid epidemic, as well as a fund aimed at addressing narcotic and opioid abuse by minors. Members, the unregulated industry that currently exists is a public health hazard, and it is our duty to ensure that we are protecting Texans against harmful products. We do have a panel of expert witnesses that we will have come up to answer questions about the science of hemp and the differences in the different cannabinoids mentioned in House Bill 28. With that, I would answer questions, or we can start with our expert testimony. Seeing none. Let the record reflect that Representative Guillen is with us.
Yeah, you can call from there, and I'll get this pulled up.
This is it, right?
Oh, yeah.
Chair calls Dr. Josie Guindon. Did I say that right? Anyone close? Associate Professor of Pharmacology and Neuroscience at Texas Tech University. Chair calls Diana Eberlein, Chair of the Coalition for Adult Beverages Alternative. Steve Dye, Chief of Police for the City of Allen Police Department. Okay. So the record shows you are Diana Eberlein? And you are representing the Coalition for Adult Beverage Alternatives? And you are for the bill?
Yes.
Okay. Record shows you are Steve Dye?
Yes, sir.
And you are Chief Police, and you're representing Texas Police Association, and you are against the bill?
Yes, sir.
And record shows you're Josie Guiandon? Did I say that right?
Yes, yes.
Representing Texas Tech University of Health Science Center, and you are neutral on the bill. Is that all correct? Thank you. Ms. Guiandon, why don't we start with you?
Yes, can you hear me well?
Yes.
Perfect, okay. So I will start. So cannabis is a plant containing 540 chemicals, including 80 to 100 cannabinoids, or a group of compounds with similar chemical structure. And the most behaviorally active of these is called delta-9 THC. Delta-9 THC interacts with cannabinoid receptor found in the body, primarily cannabinoid receptor 1 and cannabinoid receptor 2. Delta-8 THC is another cannabinoid, and it differs from delta-9 THC in important ways. Delta-8 THC is less potent than delta-9 THC. This means that people will need to consume more delta-8 THC to produce the same effect as delta-9 THC. Delta-8 THC is found in the cannabis plant in very small amounts, whereas the amounts of delta-9 THC in the plant are much higher. However, because delta-8 THC can be synthesized from chemical modification of another popular cannabinoid called cannabidiol, or also referred as CBD, its presence in the market has been increasing. In addition to natural cannabinoids, delta-9 THC and delta-8 THC, they're human-made, or also referred as synthetic cannabinoids. Synthetic cannabinoids can produce higher, greater intoxication than the natural cannabinoids, delta-9 and delta-8 THC. Because synthetic cannabinoids are full agonists of the at the cannabinoid receptors, and the natural cannabinoids are typically partial agonists at cannabinoid receptors. This means that synthetic cannabinoid can activate cannabinoid receptors to a much greater degree than delta-9 THC and delta-8 THC. Basically, to illustrate this difference, let me give you an example. Think of a volume control knob on a radio that can be turned up to 10. Natural cannabinoids like delta-9 THC have a limit to how high the volume can go. They can only turn the volume up to 3 or 4. And the volume control knob cannot go any higher than 3 or 4 after consumption of delta-9 THC. In contrast, synthetic cannabinoids can increase the volume up to 10, which means synthetic cannabinoids can produce much greater effects than delta-9 THC, including psychological effects, change in heart, disorientation, and loss of motor control. Furthermore, synthetic cannabinoids are also frequently contaminated with other illegal drugs that worsen their effects. So in terms of issue about legislation, for the legislator and the policymaker, when you're thinking about what is the best way to think about limits or dosage caps, if you prefer, in terms of comparing and contrasting a percentage versus weight amount in milligrams. So a percentage, 0.3 THC, by weight or volume, says nothing about the amount consumed. Let's compare this to buying 2% fat milk. That information alone, 2% fat, doesn't say anything about how much fat someone will consume when they drink that milk. Obviously, one needs to know how much milk, basically ounces or milliliters of that 2% milk is being consumed in order to know how much fat has been consumed. If we know the percentage, in this example, 2% fat milk, and the amount that we have of the amount of milk that we have, which is a gallon, we can easily calculate how much fat is in that gallon of milk. And therefore, you will know how much fat can be consumed if someone drinks the entire gallon. In turn, 0.3 THC does not indicate how much total THC a person consumes if you do not also know the total amount of that solution, gummy or other products that was consumed. So basically, a limit in the amount consumed can only be established with a milligram weight or a milliliter total if you are thinking about using percentage. So cannabinoids can be administered or taken by different route of administration. So basically, if you are talking about inhalation, which could be referred as smoking or vaping, the effects of the THC will be within minutes. If you ingest it, then the effect, which refer to oral consumption, the effects will be within 30 minutes. All of these effects can last 4 to 6 hours or longer time if larger amount are consumed. Oral THC will produce a slightly slower and more prolonged effect. The length of time for symptoms will also vary from people to people. If you're talking about alcohol, so basically if you talk about alcohol tends to produce more disinhibition, unpredictable and excessive behavior, motor incompetence, and sedation at large doses. However, Delta-9 THC produces more disorientation, sometimes paranoia, distortion of perception and time, or a feeling of calm and relaxation. The effects will depend on the amount of THC and other cannabinoids present in the product. Then it's important also to know that Delta-9 THC is metabolized into compounds that are no longer active. However, this process can be slow because THC is fat soluble, meaning that it can enter fat tissue where it is protected from being metabolized. That is all. Thank you so much for your time.
Okay. Should we go ahead and go through? Okay. We're going to hold questions for this witness till we let all the witnesses get their statement out. Okay. Record shows you are Diana Eberline. You're
Yes.
representing the Coalition for Adult Beverages and Alternatives, and you're for the bill, and that's still correct?
Correct.
Please proceed.
Good morning, Chairman King and committee members. Thank you for hearing from me and a number of my colleagues this morning regarding the creation of a safe, intoxicating hemp marketplace in Texas through HB 28. My name is Diana Eberline. I'm chair of the Coalition for Adult Beverage Alternatives, which brings the alcohol and hemp beverage industries together to create a unified voice for sensible regulation of D9 THC beverages. The Coalition for Adult Beverage Alternatives represents the THC beverage category exclusively, and our members include some of the largest low-dose THC beverages currently in the Texas market, the leading supply chain partners, and adult beverage manufacturers, distributors, and retailers, also present in Texas. Our recommended policy mirrors guidelines proposed by national alcohol distribution and retail associations such as the Wine and Spirits Wholesalers of America and American Beverage Licensees, representing America's beer, wine, and spirits retailers. I'd like to acknowledge that we know that none of you expected to be regulating intoxicating products with the passage of the 2018 Farm Bill. We also understand that you're concerned about consumer safety, and as our other expert witness just testified, cannabinoids are a lot more complicated than alcohol in many ways. But we're concerned about those things too. And we see the same challenges in the marketplace that you do, and we also want to see the removal of high-dose synthetic intoxicants from the marketplace. We want to implement standardized testing and labeling standards and eliminate the chance of any of these intoxicating products ending up in the hands of minors, which is why we advocate for regulation versus bans or the status quo. The conversations around HB 28 are the beginning of a more important dialogue around safe and accessible intoxicating hemp products that right now Texans are consuming to the tune of $8 billion, according to the Lieutenant Governor. Consumer demand for the cannabis goes way beyond Texas, and it has continued to increase for the last 30 years, according to Carnegie Mellon, who recently reported that daily consumption of cannabis has surpassed alcohol in the United States. Banning intoxicating hemp products would delay the conversation but not eliminate the problem, driving the market deeper underground. We know prohibition won't eliminate demand. It didn't work with alcohol, and it hasn't worked in states like California. California currently has an active ban on intoxicating hemp products right now. It also has a thriving illicit market that is over 70% of the state's cannabis market. With limited resources to enforce the ban, the high-dose synthetic products they wanted to remove remain on shelves, and they're still accessible to minors. But you know whose products did get pulled from shelves? The THC beverages being distributed and sold by alcohol partners. Why? Because the three-tier system works, and there are severe penalties for violating those regulations when you're within that system. We have several states, such as Tennessee, currently operating safe and successful intoxicating marketplaces for beverages using infrastructure similar to those that are outlined in HB 28. And as a result, other markets, including South Carolina and Florida, are moving forward with similar bills as well. Why? Because the pathway to market allows for accessibility to the adult consumer, and again, out of reach of minors. Your job is to keep your constituents, Texans, happy and safe. Now, happy's a heavy lift. There's only so much I can do to help you guys there. But in terms of safety, we can provide the science-based data and testing methods for hemp-derived THC beverages that confirm consistent experience, accurate dosing, safe and natural ingredients, and manufacturing and testing best practices. And some anecdotal evidence would support that access to safe, low-dose THC products can help on the happiness scale. We have seen the demand increase considerably with veterans, with Texas retailers making regular donations of THC beverages to those that have fought for our country. No one deserves to be happier than those who have fought for our country. We also have data documenting that consumers begin feeling these effects between 10 to 20 minutes after consumption, and then an offset where the intoxicating effects start to diminish between 60 and 90 minutes, which is very reminiscent of consumers' experience with other adult beverages. Just like alcohol, every consumer will need to learn their tolerance, but it's a familiar and controllable experience, which also makes beverage an insurable adult option for on-premise consumption. We're not looking to receive special treatment. In fact, we're looking to be treated like other intoxicating beverages, from pathway to market to accessibility to the adult consumer to taxation and penalties for regulatory violations. The unknowns are more known with THC beverage, so we can empower you to confidently and effectively regulate these products while making safe products available for adult consumers in Texas. Thank you for your time and consideration for sensible regulation of low-dose THC beverages in Texas.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Show you as Steve Dye, representing Texas Police Association. You're against the bill, and all that's still correct?
Yes, sir.
Please proceed.
Thank you, sir. Good morning, Chairman King, Vice Chair Hernandez, and committee members. My name is Steve Dye. I'm the Chief of Police in Allen and am representing the Texas Police Chiefs Association regarding the THC consumable products. You know, while we appreciate the intent of House Bill 28, we oppose it as written, and I will address our concerns. On behalf of TPCA, we appreciate this committee addressing serious concerns of police professionals across the state regarding the illegal and open sale of consumable THC products, which are currently being sold in retail stores throughout the state and are more potent than ever before. When I became the Allen chief in February of last year, I found that our city was like many across Texas. We had 24 of these shops in a city of just over 27 square miles. Many of these stores are close to our schools. We were receiving complaints from parents and regularly finding high school kids in possession of these THC consumables. We decided to further investigate and obtain video of kids streaming into these stores. Our subsequent investigations in partnership with the DEA and the Collin County District Attorney's Office have resulted in multiple undercover purchases of THC consumables, covert video whereby clerks and owners openly discuss which products have the best highs, 9 search and arrest warrants to date, 5 arrests to date, numerous THC consumables seized, over 80 products to date that have tested 7 to 78% THC with the average THC concentration 29%. We found that the THC concentrations listed on the packaging is always lower than the tested contents. Our criminal investigations are ongoing and criminal charges are forthcoming. Due to the current testing requirements and lack of clarity in the law, these types of investigations are very time-consuming and expensive, which is exactly why most local police departments are unable to adequately address these illegal products. As Texas law enforcement professionals, our concerns include THC consumables are lab-made, highly potent, unpredictable, and significantly more than the naturally grown marijuana from the past, which had a THC concentration usually less than 5%. The exploitation of 2018 federal farm bill, which legalized hemp, has led to the outright sale of these products under the guise that these substances are legal hemp imported from other states. Companies are chemically modifying industrial hemp and continuing to create new THC variants that are sold over the counter. We found that many products are mislabeled by out-of-state laboratories over which Texas law enforcement has zero oversight or enforcement. So most consumers have no idea what they're actually consuming. THC consumables are being infused into normal-looking foods with packaging and sugary flavors, often targeted at our youth consumers. They're easily accessible and have significant health risk to our adolescents. Currently, testing is required on every THC consumable product seized by law enforcement. Police departments cannot afford this testing, and the retailers know it. Texas has one of the largest recreational THC consumable markets in the country, with most stores located close to our schools. This plague is in every city and every town, and state agencies will never have the resources to regulate, so local law enforcement needs a definitive statute that allows our departments to make arrests and seizures without the need to test products. Testing should always be the responsibility of the retailer. I provided you with factual information from stores in our Allen investigation showing how these products are marketed as candy, chips, and cookies, a photo of how labels are covered up by wholesalers and retailers to disguise the actual THC concentration in the packaging, and a sales goal from one store demonstrating the vast revenue being generated by these illegal products. Across Texas, we are now seeing burglaries and robberies on these businesses so that these THC products, which should have never been in existence in the first place, can be illegally resold. Our concerns with House Bill 28, as written, include THC beverages should not be considered as a carve-out. To us, the beverage is just another delivery method, as vapes, waxes, and edibles. We can't rush this decision, as it will only create another loophole that we'll be addressing again in 2027. If we don't ban all THC, then departments will continue to face significant challenges toward enforcement and testing. No THC should be allowed in any retail product, so that the DPS lab will only have to test for the presence of THC, not quantity, and thus eliminate their backlog when law enforcement is trying to get these products tested on the criminal cases that we are filing. It is our understanding that CBD and CBDG can both be manufactured to contain no THC. The federal 0.3 THC standard is for hemp plant. We believe that this does not apply to the retail product for consumption, which we believe can be regulated at the state level. Retailers, not law enforcement, should be required to test their products in Texas labs certified by the DEA and register each of them through dishes prior to placing them on their shelves for sale. TPCA continues to support the established and legal Texas Compassionate Use Program for those with legitimate needs to seek assistance through a reliable and safe program. I have also provided handouts of a letter signed by the Texas Police Chiefs Association, the Sheriff's Association of Texas, the Texas School District Police Chiefs Association, TMPA, CLEAT, with all groups united in the support of banning all THC consumable products. Thank you, and I'll be happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Mr. Dye. Members, or questions of any of our panel? Mr. Darby, before, I don't know which one of you is going to question. Just for the record, though, when you're asked a question, please just restate your name before you begin. Thank you.
I guess to the panel, I've heard a lot about synthetics, and I know very little. So can anyone on the panel explain the difference between synthetics and this THC, which is approved for the TCUP program? So reduce it down to where West Texas boy can understand it.
Well, I'm from Claude, sir, so we speak the same language. I'll give you the practical answer, and I'll refer to them for the maybe more technical. So
Please say
from a
your
law
name.
enfor- I'm sorry,
Please
Chief
say-
Steve Dye.
Thank you, Steve. Go ahead.
Sorry, Chairman. So from a practitioner's standpoint, what's happening is they're taking the Delta 9, and now there's, of course, the Delta 8, the Delta 10. Almost every week, there's a new variant of THC being produced. They change the molecular structure in these deltas, and then they add chemicals, and that's what makes it synthetic. So when a product is consumed, many times about half of that product are chemicals that haven't been tested. We don't know what type of harm they're doing to the body. So when you hear synthetic, that means they've taken a natural portion of the plant, likely changed the molecular structure, and then added a lot of chemicals and additives to create, many times a higher high or a quicker reaction to the product.
Okay.
So yes, and the material, Diana Eberline. The material is essentially being converted using a chemical process to become the intoxicating cannabinoid. However, there is a way to naturally isolate the D9 from the plant, and that is what we are advocating for, the natural D9 THC, and we're only advocating for D9 in this case as the only intoxicating cannabinoid that could be permitted in these products. So none of the others that are typically in the market that are synthetic, sometimes 100% synthetic.
Go ahead.
Yes, so I would just like, so.
Ma'am.
Your name?
Sorry, Josie Gwendon, Dr. Josie Gwendon. So basically, synthetic cannabinoids, it's a great question. They're really more and strong, potent agonists at the receptors, right? So to understand it, they really bind strongly to the receptors, and it takes longer to desensitize. So basically, the molecules stay attached to the receptor, if I make sense, and then it doesn't detach. And what is more dangerous is the synthetic compounds that also are known for some of you as spice or K2. These are purely synthesized chemically. So, or GWH018, and these are very dangerous. These are pure synthetic cannabinoids, much stronger than THC, because delta-9 THC, as a molecule itself, even if you can now increase the amount or the concentration of THC in plants through different process, the synthetic, basically the delta-9 THC and coming from the plant directly are only partial agonists to these receptors. So basically,
Can you repeat that?
synthetic-
Partial what?
Partial agonists. So basically, they bind to the
So that-
receptors, but in a weaker way.
Partial what? I'm sorry, I'm having.
Partial agonists mean you bind to the receptors, but it's more a loose connection, if it makes sense. But the synthetic cannabinoid will really strongly bind to these receptors and not detach easily. Does that make sense? So basically, the synthetic cannabinoids are much stronger and more potent and extremely dangerous, and they can be purely synthesized by chemists, not coming from the plant. And these are very dangerous because they've been used they're used in research, but their effects are over sometimes 100 times stronger than THC.
Mr. Chairman, Steve Dye, Chief of Police. Representative Darby, just one other kind of quick example. So So Delta 8 is found in the hemp product. So in its natural form, Delta 8 is non-psychoactive, which means it doesn't have over 0.3 THC, right? But when they chemically modify it or synthesize it, then it starts to produce a high. So you'll hear that Delta 8, well, that's nothing wrong, it's not harmful. Well, in its natural form, that may be true. But when all of these chemicals and additives are added, it then becomes psychoactive and much more addictive and intoxicating.
Diana Eberlein, Coalition for Adult Beverage Alternatives. D8 naturally does exist in the plant, however, in very, very small quantities, which is why you see a majority of the D8 in market is synthetic. Again, why we're focused more so on the D9 aspect for, again, consistency. But one thing that I think is really important to identify is the fact that there are testing methods that brands do already to identify what is in their product, but also it can tell you whether that product is synthetic or not. So that's very standard in common practice right now. So it's not difficult to determine which products are synthetic and which products are using naturally derived D9. So with that being part of the regulation, you would be able to make sure that the product in market is using naturally derived D9 and not synthetic material.
Okay.
Let's talk about the testing. I think everybody wants to make sure that what they consume is actually what they think it is. Steve, you talked about having the testing be the responsibility of the individual seller or store that's selling that product. Talk about the testing, how involved in that, what kind of cost, time delay, all the factors associated with testing, and how can we get comfortable with knowing what's actually in that product? Thank you.
Steve Dye, Chief of Police. So Representative, that's a great question. So the way it is now, the testing for each product costs about $250 per test. So most departments in the state of Texas cannot afford that. So they submit their products to the DPS lab. Well, currently, if we're going to file a criminal case or just find out whether or not the product is illegal, they have to send that product to the DPS lab. Because the DPS lab has to test for quantity, it's a very complex, time-consuming, and expensive test. They cannot handle the capacity across the state, and you'll hear from Brady Mills here in a little while, I'm sure about that. So what we decided to do, it's such a problem in our community, and I wanted to really understand the facts. So that's why we took it on our own volition to go and start testing these products. We're probably up to about $30,000 to $40,000 that our city has paid thus far in testing these products because we've had to use a private lab to do that more complex testing, and we need the results back more quickly because we're filing a criminal case. So what we propose, Texas Police Chiefs Association proposes that, like any retailer, if you're going to sell a product, you need to make sure that what's on the contents of that product on the label is actually in the product. Because what we found in our 80-plus testing, almost never does the tested contents, does that concentration of THC match what's on the label. It's always higher. So you can't rely on that packaging. That comes from an out-of-state lab. God knows if it's accredited. We have no way to know. All I can tell you is the products we've tested are almost always much higher. So we're proposing that the retailers, if you're going to sell a product, whatever product it is, THC consumables or whatever it is, then you bear the burden of testing the product before you put it on the shelves. You know, why should taxpayers have to pay to test your product so you can make money? And then they would...
Just because you're talking about it, are you suggesting that each retailer would pay $250 per product that they're selling?
No, sir. What they would do is they would test each batch of their product, right? Not we tested specimens that we seized. They would test a batch, and then we propose that they enter that batch into the dishes registry. So as law enforcement, when we walk in, if we see a product on a shelf, we can look on the dishes registry if it's already been tested by that seller and see if it's an approved product. Now, there still could be fraud in their testing, but that relieves the burden of law enforcement from having to do that testing on the front end.
I guess I don't understand batch. A
So
retailer
they'll-
gets a
Yes, sir.
product in, how do they know, are they going to have to test each product shipment that they get in?
Yes,
To
sir.
make sure that that product meets?
So if you go into one of these stores, it looks like a candy store or fireworks stand. There's all these brightly colored packaging. So each different type of product that they want to offer for sale, they would have to, if they got a crate of it, they would have to take one of the specimens or pieces or packages of that crate to have that crate tested. We're not asking to test every product, but every product of that kind would have to be tested and entered into the dishes registry.
And how long will that testing process last?
Well, it would be forever. So because there's no regulation on these products, sir, there's no FDA approval. Typically, when you go in a grocery store, because things are FDA approved, you know with good confidence that what's in the package matches the label. Well, this is an entirely unregulated industry, so I would offer that until this industry becomes regulated, then they would need to test.
Okay.
And Diana Eberline, Coalition for Adult Beverage Alternatives. With beverage specifically, because HB 28 is focused on regulating beverage and putting these products into liquor channels where alcohol is sold and served, these are locations that are not trying to appeal to children. You have to be 21 to buy a Coca-Cola in these locations. So that mitigates, some of the issues we have there. In terms of the testing, a lot of these products already have gone through that testing, and they have a QR code on their packaging that you can scan and then see the certificate of analysis. What other states have done is had basically certified labs register for that state so that their documentation is being kind of filtered back and forth, and they can verify that this is an accredited lab that has done the testing for this product. And that's alleviated, again, some of that concern. What we can also provide, my background is working for a food science emulsion technology company. So the active ingredient that's in beverage is the water-soluble version of the D9. So what we've done is we've converted that oil into a water-soluble emulsion, which anyone who's worked in CPG or food and beverage before knows emulsion technology isn't new. It's just been improved upon to be more effective for cannabinoids so that these products can have the same dosage in the first sip as they do in the last, and that these products are stable. We've done testing to make sure that the cans and the packaging are sufficient so that the consumer gets the full dose that is labeled on that product. Again, we have, because of the water-soluble technology, and that's what can show the consistent onset and offset, that 10 to 20 minutes, and then the 60 to 90-minute offset. We have this data, and we've done this. In terms of stability of the product and how long that testing would last for, these products shouldn't be on the shelves longer than 3 months, right? No beverage is planning to be sitting on the shelves for that long to begin with. But we have stability studies for these brands that if they are manufactured appropriately using a high-quality emulsion, and naturally derived D9 is also extremely expensive in comparison to the converted material that we heard about, the synthetic. So brands who are using the all-natural solution are already investing in having a higher quality product with longer stability so that they can guarantee that consistent experience. I think anyone in CPG knows that if you can't guarantee a consistent experience, you don't have a consumer anyway. So we've already kind of laid the foundation for that and can provide the guardrails and even do some of the education and training for laboratories on how to test for this product, which we had to do 8 years ago when beverage first launched within the dispensary channel in Washington State and California. So this is not necessarily new hurdles for us to overcome. It's just the fact that now it's in this hemp channel. So it's definitely things that we can handle and, again, prove that there is stability and safety in these products.
Just wanted to add, so that's a good point. Right now, some studies have been, scientific studies have been looking at these edible products, more like the gummies, and what's found right now is that if you look at individual one, let's say in the same bag, like from scientific studies, they evaluate that, like the concentration. There's a huge variety from some, on the package you could say like 2 milligram, but then if they scientifically measure one, well, let's say it was 2 milligram and the other one was like 10 milligrams, so that was what was found in studies, just to add a point.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. McQueen? Mr. Turner?
Hey, Mr. Chairman. I want to make sure I got my definitions right to start out with. So Delta 8 is, small amounts are found in any type of hemp. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And then Delta 9 is what happens when, or what results when Delta 8 is chemically modified?
No, actually, Delta 8 and Delta 9 are both found in the THC plants. Delta 9 is the most important constituent of that plant, so found in the most quantity if you take a cannabis plant. Does that make sense?
Okay, so Delta 9 and Delta 8 are
8 are
naturally
present,
found.
and Delta 8 also produce, you need to take more of Delta 8, let's say if you extract Delta 8 from the plant, to produce the same effect as Delta 9 THC, because it's present in less amount.
So Delta 9 is more
Yeah.
potent?
Delta 9 is more potent, correct, as I said.
Okay.
Delta 8 is less potent.
Okay. And so when we talk about chemically modifying hemp, and are we using the term chemically, I think, Chief, you used the phrase chemically modifying. Is that used interchangeably as synthetic when we talk about synthetics? Are we saying the same thing there?
So just to clarify,
Whoever
like the
wants.
plant itself, you can extract Delta 9, you can extract Delta 8. The synthetic cannabinoids, which I refer to, you can synthesize them in the lab without the plant itself. Does it make sense? You can synthesize these compounds like
You extract the compound.
straight from a chemist can make it with the formula and the steps to create the compound. Does it make sense?
Yes.
That's for the synthetic compound. You can make them basically in a lab without having the plant access to it. It can be totally synthesized, artificially, man-made.
Representative Turner, Chief Dye. Representative Turner, so the definition in the 2018 Farm Bill, that point, no more than 0.3% Delta 9 THC, that was used to define what is hemp, correct? So to her point, that what's happening now, we're seeing new variants constantly produced, and they are, as I mentioned, they are lab-made. So they're not even bringing in the plants at this point. They're just making them, chemically producing them in a lab.
Diana Eberlein, Coalition for Adult Beverage Alternatives. You've got kind of a variety of things happening, which is why this has gotten so complex and confusing for not only for you to understand, but also for the consumer. Which is why we're so focused on D9 specifically and eliminating the conversation around D8 and some of the others. Because our target consumer with these low-dose THC beverages is oftentimes someone who's not necessarily a cannabis consumer or a super experienced. They're looking for other options for adult beverages. So we have a very new consumer coming to the table, and the more cannabinoids and things you include, the difference between synthetic and all natural, it's confusing for a consumer. So that's why we're so focused on the naturally derived D9. And to his point with the, the definition of the Farm Bill and the hemp was defined at that 0.3%. Everyone was told, it's rope, not dope. Turns out a little bit of dope in that rope. And when you isolate it, that's what's being used in these all-natural products that are using the naturally derived D9. And like I said, it's a laborious process. You need a lot of hemp to get the amount of THC that you need to create these products, but it's worth it to be able to provide a consistent experience and a safe product for the consumer. That again, that consistent experience is crucial. And the only way you can do that is to make sure that you are using the same cannabinoid. And whether you get it from hemp or marijuana, D9 is D9. The molecule itself will not be the difference. When you're looking at converted materials, whether it is CBD that is being converted into D9 or a completely synthetic version of THC, sometimes it's the molecule that's not the problem. It's the other ingredients that were used to make that conversion. And without regulation, we don't have transparency into what those processes look like. Therefore, testing to make sure that it doesn't have certain levels of an active ingredient makes it very difficult. I think a lot of people in this room know that synthetic is not a dirty word on its own. Vitamin C, most of the vitamin C we consume in the marketplace is synthetic. It's about the transparency, it's about the testing, it's about knowing the active ingredients that are used in those processes. But again, to find a pathway forward, make sure that we're putting the safest product out there. We've decided, and this is why we, support this portion of the bill in terms of the all-natural D9 is the way to eliminate the risk of synthetics and the concern that's currently in the marketplace.
Chief Dye, Representative Turner, this is part of the deception. The adult consumers are going to these stores and these strip centers, and they may be thinking they're buying a product that is at least in part natural, and many times they're buying a product that has no natural components, all chemically produced in a laboratory, and they have no idea what they're actually consuming because it's not matching the label.
And Diana with the Coalition for, or Diana Eberlein with the Coalition for Adult Beverage Alternatives, again, with regulation, you can easily test and determine which products are not using natural products. So if you, with regulation, you can clean up this marketplace significantly.
Okay, and Ms. Eberlin, to follow up on that, so if I'm understanding your testimony correctly, the beverages that are on the market right now, the product that you're representing, your testimony is those are all natural in that the THC is all derived from the hemp plant. There's no chemical modification done to those
The brands that
substances.
we are working with, and I know from the liquor partners that we're working with the products that they are carrying, they are using naturally derived D9.
Okay, so the brands you're working with are using naturally derived D9, but you're not making a blanket statement for every product that's out there.
Yeah, I can't speak on behalf
Yeah,
of
that's fair.
everybody because there are going to be brands that fly under the radar that don't join associations and advocate for sensible regulation.
And those products that you are working with that are use naturally derived D9, those are all tested to where they do not exceed 0.3% THC, is that right?
Correct, yes.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Representative Ginn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Please bear with me because I'm not very versed in this subject. But what I understand the bill to do is it bans everything except some drink products. Is that right?
Correct.
Pretty much. Right now, there's a lot of products out there that are available. Are there products that are dangerous, that are out there? Are there products out there that are, that we need to take off the streets
On the beverage side or in general?
in general?
What, you want to think about that one? Because I can give you an answer. Chief Dye, absolutely. There's conditions now that have come forward, cannabinoid hyperemesis syndrome, CVS, your cyclic vomiting syndrome. So what we're starting to see are now valid research, and there's a lot of it out there, sir, that shows, particularly when used regularly at younger ages, some very permanent health effects. You'll hear likely from some mothers today that can talk to you about their own experiences. But yes, sir, what we see in law enforcement is these products are highly toxic. I'll have 41 years on the job in May, and I went through the K2 Spice bath salts. And what we saw there is we saw deaths quickly happening. And so I think it got everybody's attention really quickly. We're not seeing that same type of outcome here. I think it's more of a slower disability effect. But when we talk to people in our communities, particularly, with the younger consumers, we see a lot of harm. It's an unregulated industry. Again, we talked about the synthetic nature of these products, and nobody knows what's in these products that they're taking. But I know in our hospitals and our county jails, we're having a lot of people going through withdrawals. These chemical products are very highly addictive. So we come at it first and foremost, not from an enforcement standpoint. We're about the quality of life in our communities, and we have significant concerns about the health and safety of our citizens.
Doctor, what is your response?
Yes, Dr. Gwen, Texas Tech University Science Center. Yes. So basically, this is a a great point. So the synthetic one, like I explained, are completely made in a lab. And the spice, or K2, is GWH 018. This was created a long time ago by Dr. Hoffman, and it was made for a lab purposes to look into cells and experiments and
So
things like
I've heard that several times, that it's completely made in a lab.
Yes.
I guess the presumption is that if it's made in a lab, it's bad, and if it's natural, it's good. That's what I guess y'all are trying to get us to understand. Is that right or not?
The best way to explain it is these synthetic compounds are extremely, extremely potent. Like I said, to the receptors, they bind, and they will stay bind to the receptors, so they will have really detrimental effect, like it was noted, and it's very dangerous because they're 100 more potent than the delta 9 THC that you will take from a plant.
So you're saying that there are products out there in Texas that are dangerous and that we need to regulate and control?
According to, yes, the police officer, and there've been, these compounds exist because they can be synthetically made and even bought from other countries and brought in. So yes, these compounds exist.
So tell me, are there products that are out there now that you don't think are bad, that aren't dangerous, but that this bill gets rid of or bans?
Chief Dye, I would say no, sir. Not that I know of, I think. We've been in the stores, we took the time in Allen to dig into this, so I can speak to the facts. We have no issues with CBD and CBG, zero issues. We support the compassionate use program, because those are the TCUP is a safe, reliable, legal program. The CBD and CBG does not offer the synthetic psychoactive ingredients, and then we have to deal not only with the intoxications, but the health issues, and particularly, again, focusing on our younger people. So, yeah, the only reason we're opposing House Bill 28 is because we feel like, at this point, the beverages are just another delivery system for the THC.
Diane Eberlein with the Coalition for Adult Beverage Alternatives. I do believe that there are good actors in many categories. I do believe that we need regulation to help identify those so that we can maintain a safe marketplace. With a ban, you won't get rid of the bad actors. Their products will remain and be pushed deeper underground, but the consumer demand is there. They will find those products. Adults will find those products. Kids will find those products. It's essential that you get the regulation in place to protect the consumer. Without that, you're going to have the same situation that California has, which is a thriving illicit market, and the bad products that they wanted to get rid of are still easily accessible with packaging that is very appealing to kids. It's going through no testing, that it does exist. But there's also good actors in other categories. I think beverage, because of our partners and the groups that we are working with, they work within a three-tier system. They work within a regulated system. We work with co-packers and brewers that work within regulated markets already, that have federal licenses, state licenses, that they're not willing to risk for an opportunity that, while is growing in terms of demand and revenue and potential tax revenue, it's not larger than their alcohol business. So they're not going to stick their neck out for something if they think they're jeopardizing the safety of their consumer. And again, we're looking for these products to be made accessible to adult consumers through a retail location only adults can gain access to.
Do I understand it correctly that you're saying a regulated market is what you need? This bill provides that for beverages. And if this bill or any other bill provided it for other products, that you would be supportive of regulating maybe some other products, I don't know what kind, that fit a certain category, but that are regulated. Is that accurate? Or?
We obviously, I represent beverage stakeholders who only work in the beverage sector. That said, we don't want anyone who's running a safe business providing products that are manufactured safely with appropriate, dosage caps, an appropriate channel to market. We don't want to hurt any of those businesses. So if there were regulations that were created for other categories that put the consumer first, we are not going to object to that, but we only advocate on behalf of beverage because that's who our stakeholders are.
Thank you.
Mr. McQueenie.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Do any of you have an expertise on what you think the intention of the Farm Bill was in 2018? Do you think that the goal was to create an intoxicating beverage industry, or do you think this is a byproduct of that bill?
Chief Dye, no, not at all. I grew up on a farm. This was the sole intent when you talk to people that know about this legislation. As the 2019 Texas legislation, this was to help the farmers, pure and simple, but they've exploited the loophole, and now law enforcement is dealing with a huge plague in our cities.
Diana Eberlein with the Coalition for Adult Beverage Alternatives. I do a lot of the lobbying on behalf of this category in DC at the federal level as well. I know that there is a lot of frustration about how this whole hemp industry came to be, and it was because that was not the intent with the Farm Bill in 2018. That said, going back 10 years when I first entered this space, we always saw low-dose beverage really eventually being next to the beer, wine, seltzers, kind of with next to their alcohol counterparts. These products, when they initially launched within dispensary channels in California and Washington State, these are appealing to a demographic that isn't necessarily walking into these dispensaries. It is low margin, takes up a lot of space. These dispensaries were not set up to carry a ton of beverages. They didn't want to carry refrigerators. They didn't understand it because it was, again, appealing to oftentimes a very different target consumer. The target consumer walking through a Total Wine or a Specs, that's very much who they were trying to appeal to. When this opportunity through the Farm Bill emerged, beverage was actually late to the game in terms of entering this space. Minnesota was a market that really adopted regulation for the beverage category specifically, and they have, in the last year, I think it was $180 million in sales for hemp D9 beverages alone. And they taxed everything. I think they brought in $15 to $18 million in tax revenue to enforce the regulation they put through hemp.
Got it. So-
We jumped into this category to prove the demand for our category because we weren't going to see it in the dispensary channel.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Phelan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Two questions. One, where are these being manufactured? Is this someone's garage? Is it someone's living room? Is someone wearing a white coat, lab
No.
coat doing this? Like, who's manufacturing?
Again, Diana Eberlein. So oftentimes it's brewers. We are dealing with large co-packers, beverage professionals that are manufacturing these products. They have certifications that are required to do, alcohol as well as functional beverage, and they are applying all of those same safety standards and guidelines to these products. And the ingredients are all typical of beverage manufacturing with the exception of the THC D9 itself.
I'm speaking less to the beverages and more to
Yes.
the other products.
Yes, sir. Chief Dye. Yes, sir. Great question. We don't know because they're all coming in from out of state. They have these COAs, these certificates of accuracy, and when we've tested our products, they have never matched the certificates of accuracy. So they're out-of-state labs. Most of the products that we have seized in Allen are coming from California. That's exactly why if any type of this product is to continue, they've got to be tested in Texas labs that are DEA certified, so we have oversight and enforcement. We can go to those labs, we can do quality control. The problem that we see with regulation is it's going to be very expensive. We don't understand as an association why the taxpayers should be burdened to regulating a product that just makes people high. And here's the other problem, sir, is we have a great relationship with TABC. Our state agencies do a great job, but they're significantly overwhelmed in their responsibility. So, bar checks, massage parlors, all of these things in our local communities, while we partner with them, we as local police departments, we're responsible for holding those illegal businesses accountable. We can't depend on the state to do it for us. So if we go to this regulation and we'll have TABC do it, we've seen where they're not going to have the resources to handle what they've already got on their plate. and that concerns us greatly.
Have you ever tested a beverage?
No, sir, we have not tested or seized any beverages to this date. No, sir.
Have you ever tested a product that was accurate as far as what they represented on the packaging?
We've tested a couple that were actually below the 0.3. I don't recall if they were actually accurate, but I believe we've tested 83 samples, I believe, and there's only been probably less than 5, I believe, that have tested below the 0.3, but I'm not sure if that was accurate to the label. So the vast majority have not been accurate to the label.
And last question for you, Chief. You provided the committee with this, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, my eyes are not great, but when I put my glasses on, I see not Doritos, but Doritos.
Yes,
Is that
sir.
correct?
Correct.
I don't see Chips Ahoy, I see Trips Ahoy.
Yes, sir.
Okay. What are these labels on the Skittles and Warheads and the rest of them? I mean, what am I looking at here?
You're looking at packaging that tries to very closely assimilate with the actual product that kids are drawn to, and they'll change a word or a letter in that phrase. So even the adult consumer, when you walk into these stores, if you're not really paying attention, you may think you're buying a package of Skittles, and you're not. It's very deceiving, and it's marketed specifically for what we believe are our younger folks.
So these are not Skittles?
No,
This
sir.
is another product put in this, what it looks like a Skittles bag?
It's another THC edible, and just to give you a point of comparison, one gummy weighs about 3.2 grams and would contain 9.6 milligrams of THC. So to the doctor's point on these edibles, a particular problem with the edibles is it's just assuming by dry weight that you're going to only maybe consume one of that product. Well, who eats one gummy? Who eats one chip? I mean, a chip is 4 grams and it's going to have, 3 milligrams of THC. So an additional problem with the edibles is, with the dry weight, is it doesn't take into account the quantity that's going to be consumed.
Where was this photo taken, or these photos?
Allen Vape Smoke Shops.
So
Allen,
this was
Texas.
a smoke shop that someone under...
In my
the-
city, yes,
And
sir.
what's the age limit of a smoke shop? Is there one?
Well, they're supposed to not sell to under 21, but in our investigations, we have caught several of them selling to underage without asking for identification. So we had a lot of high school kids, still do, we're working through it, but we had quite a few of our high school kids going into these shops. We were able to close the most egregious shop, but we still have quite a few others left. And that's what first brought it to our attention, was our kids going into these stores. These are the vape smoke shops that you see in a lot of strip centers across the state of Texas.
Representative Hull. Let the record reflect that Representative Smithy is with us.
Thank you. And this is for the police chief. I had one of my police chiefs reach out to me and say that one of the things, you spoke a lot about, a lot of the things that he also shared with me, but he was saying that he has seen an increase in violent crime related to some of these shops, and the break-ins and robberies and then altercations and, between the people trying to protect their store and some of them trying to steal the, I guess, higher THC products. Is that something that you have seen? Is that something that is being seen across the state? Or is that more localized to, I guess, some of the places around my district?
It's Chief Dye, and yes, ma'am, that's why I'm here representing the Texas Police Chiefs Association, because it's happening all across the state. In Allen, we've seen burglaries. I know in other cities, they've seen the robberies. So this really kind of makes 2 points. This shows that even when it's legalized, quote unquote, which we believe these products are not legal, but they're being sold out in the open in these strip centers. When somebody walks into a brick and mortar strip center and is able to buy a product, they believe, well, it must be safe and it must be legal because I can walk in here and buy it. Neither is true in our opinion. And so what's happening now is they're stealing from each other, they're burglarizing and robbing each other to resell, sometimes at other stores. So The black market will thrive regardless of legalization. We've seen this in every state that's legalized marijuana, for example. There's still a very robust black market. So the fact that these stores are able to operate out in the open, it's deceiving as to safety and legality, but it is not deterring these burglaries and robberies. Some of them have been pretty violent, as you mentioned, and it's only going to get worse because they can steal that product and resell without having to go through the warehouses. Typically, these products are shipped in out of state. They're housed at large warehouses, and the warehouses are a little bit more of a secure facility, so they'll go to these retail stores and burglarize or rob each other to then either sell at another store or sell to those. The other thing that in law enforcement, these products are much harder to duplicate, manufacture, replicate on people's own volition. So it's going to be harder for the criminal element to produce a canned beverage or a packaged vape or a brightly colored packaged edible. So we do see that the eradication of the open sale will make a significant difference because we just don't see the reproduction at a high level of these types of products the way they're packaged and marketed. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, any other questions? I've got some.
Yes, sir.
Chief, I just want to start with you and thank you for your testimony. I understand your plight, and I'm not disagreeing with you. And what I've heard you say over and over, the main reason you're opposed to House Bill 28 is drinkables are just to carve out another delivery method. Am I phrasing that correctly?
Yes, sir.
Okay, because some of the other things you've brought up in your testimony, I just want to make sure that you actually read this whole bill, because, page 11 clearly speaks to marketing to children, and getting rid of those type of packages. The 21 and up is the whole point of going to the three-tier system, because you have to be 21 to go in a liquor store, and you do not have to be 21 to go in these other shops. The bill also speaks to getting rid of smokables and the vapes. And I'm going to talk to the doctor in a moment about that. But the whole point of that was these other things that are in these vape pens that are coming from other states, but certainly other countries too, that we don't, and maybe they're getting loaded with Delta 8 once they get here and repackaged. You don't know, I don't know. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
So I just want to make sure that that's clear, that that's what the bill does. The bill also, on page 21, starts talking about the manufacturer will test and pay the cost at a state-approved lab. Page 26 would mandate that the lab be in-state and registered with the DEA. Just so we're clear that that's what this bill is seeking to do, and which is a concern I've heard you mention.
Well, may I elaborate, sir?
Yes, please.
So, Chief Dye. So that's why I said at the beginning, we appreciate many of the aspects of this bill. All of the things that you mentioned, we support those aspects, and we greatly appreciate that, because that is exactly what we would recommend, right? So we are definitely in agreement on that.
I thought you were. I'm just want to point it out because some of your testimony sounded to us up here like that's not what this bill does, and I just wanted to point out that is what this
And I was
bill seeks to
speaking,
do.
yes, sir, I was speaking more to the current state of these vapes, waxes, edibles, and flowers. Yes, sir.
Understood, 100%. I just wanted to make sure everybody else understood that what you were speaking to was current, not what the bill seeks to do.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then finally, on page 33, there's a strict prohibition of selling anywhere near a school. And the packaging, we've already talked about that, would not be allowed to, can't put a tiger on a can kind of deal. So, the other question I had, okay. When you've confiscated and you've had to pay for your own testing, whether you send it to DPS or you do it independently, can you tell if it's Delta 8 or Delta 9?
No, sir, not until we have it tested, because the label.
Right, but after it's tested, the test can show you if it was synthetic or if it was Delta 9.
Yes, sir, the test can give us all of that information.
Perfect. Okay. Chief Dye, I'm going to come back to you in a minute. Diana, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
You said hemp is illegal in California,
Yes.
but everything else, marijuana is legal, is that correct?
Marijuana is legal.
Say your name, please.
Diane Eberline.
Thank you. Why is that? Because, I've spent a lot of time, when I had the privilege of chairing the licensing committee last sessions when this conversation first came up. So I've spent a lot of time researching other states and why they do things, and what it seems to me, California legalized everything, with the exception of hemp, I guess, because I wasn't aware of that, but they spent all their money on administration and nothing on policing. And California lawmakers tell me that their illicit market, since it's all become legal, has grown 400%. Would you say that's an
Correct.
accurate statement?
Yes.
Okay.
It's partially because of the high taxation and overregulation of the marijuana market that's created a market where consumers are having to go to their other buyer, they can't afford the products. That's why the illicit market has grown significantly. And then on the hemp side, they did emergency regulations last summer. And so that was Gavin Newsom who did emergency regulations to ban hemp products. And a big part of that was because of the, high dose products that they were finding accessible in areas outside of the regulated market.
Okay. All right. Let the record reflect that Representative Metcalf is with us now. So finally, Doctor?
Yes. Dr.
Please say-
Josie Gwendon, Texas Tech University Science Center.
Thank you for being here. We've covered the difference in synthetics and Delta-9. I think we're good on that. When you talk about some of these products being contaminated with, when they put Delta-8 in a product, what kind of things are we talking about with contamination?
So from what I know is from scientific readings and some of my colleagues that are doing that, like testing these compounds. So basically you can have illegal drugs, you can have metals, you can have different things in these synthetic that are combined without, when they're sold and we don't know where they're from, basically.
And when you talk about the, this chemical makeup being combined with Delta-8, bonding to a person's system for longer periods than say, Delta-9 does, would that cause psychosis, particularly in a young person?
Yes, so basically the synthetic one that are completely made, like I said, yes, they can cause psychosis, they can cause high blood pressure, severe, heart problems, and even it's very dangerous because they're 100 more potent and they're totally man-made in a lab, basically.
Okay. And you said it takes more Delta-9 to reach the same high as a synthetic Delta-8. Is that correct?
So Delta-8, you need more of Delta-8.
You need more, I'm sorry, I said that backwards.
Sorry.
More Delta-8 than
More
it does.
Delta-8 to produce the same effect as if you were taking Delta-9, because in the plant, Delta-9 is the most important constituent.
Okay, so, but when we're talking about, for the purposes of this bill, of creating a regulatory environment for a Delta-9 drinkable, in the amounts that the bill calls for, would you say that can cause psychosis and these other problems as well, or no?
So basically, even like I explained for the concentration with the gallon of milk, basically what I wanted to, my example is that even if you when you mention a concentration, if you take a lot of that concentration, then you could cause psychosis if you, let's say, drink 10 of them, for example.
Right. Well, where this bill calls for 10 milligrams, the most you can purchase in a day, it calls for us 21 and up. You can only buy one because you have to swipe an ID. So if you can only have 10 milligrams of Delta-9 a day, would you consider, saying that you could actually, that's the way it went, nobody could have more than 10 milligrams a day in a drinkable form, not a dry weight form, we're not talking about gummies, would that cause you concern?
If it would cause concern, you mean?
Yes.
Yes, what I'm not, yes, in the sense that 10 milligram is, the effect could be variable for different people, because like I explained, it's fat soluble. So basically, cannabinoid compounds are basically dissolved in fat, so it could depend of everybody's metabolism also of these cannabinoid compounds. They're metabolized and delivered by different enzyme, and it varies from person to person. So basically, depending of the person, 10 milligram could have a stronger effect, let's put it that way.
So,
For someone versus
just to
the other,
make it-
similar as alcohol.
Right, so it's similar to alcohol. I would be willing to bet that Representative Guillen can drink more beer than me.
Exactly, that's a good example. That's a good example.
That would be the example.
So if you, let's say you go, yeah, so that, so basically, everybody metabolize drugs, cannabinoids, alcohol differently. So 10 milligram, let's say if you can only have that, will have different effect for different people.
Would it be easier to measure the milligrams in a drinkable form than, say, in a gummy that weighs, as the chief pointed out, over 3 grams and a dry weight?
I think it's similar because both of, if you take more than one gummies, then you will have more than the amount, right? And the gummy will have to be, let's say, regulated to make sure that it's 2 milligrams. So both products can be regulated to basically, with the amount, because in labs, you can basically.
But you would have to
sort of-
package each individual gummy like
Yes.
you would a can of
Yes,
this drinkable.
that's correct, because that's the problem. Like, labs could do that easily, measure exactly which amount. Like the same thing you have for alcohol, for example, right? You know, you can have a beer that is 0.5, 5%, some are 12%, right? So that's basically what I'm trying to say, but if you're the quantity, if let's say you will take a lot of these, let's say you take a lot of these products at the same time, then yes, you can have like psychosis, right? If you take a lot of it. That's
Okay.
what's the point I want to make.
I appreciate that. One second, I have one more question for the doctor. Can you explain, is there a difference in THC from marijuana and THC from hemp?
THC will be the same, but delta-9 THC can be grown in different condition. So it's very hard to answer that question because you can change the condition to increase the content of THC in plants. And now with all these new technology and all these chemistry labs that we can evaluate, now delta-9 THC can have different concentration, if it makes sense. You can grow plants in different condition of humidity, lights and things like that will increase the concentration. Does that answer your question? If you will take the same condition, then you can have similar amount. But basically, you can, that's also can be done, right? You can defer the condition in terms of light, humidity, and change the concentration of delta-9 THC.
Okay, all right. Ms. Everman.
I was just going to say, I mean, the plants itself can have different concentrations of D9, but the molecule D9 to D9 is going to be the same whether it's from hemp or marijuana. So if it's 1 milligram of D9 from hemp, it's going to be the same if it's 1 milligram of D9 from marijuana, as long as one of those isn't, a converted or synthetically created, because we wouldn't know the other ingredients or chemicals used in that conversion. But the molecule itself is going to be the same. It would be the other ingredients that could impact the experience, but the molecule itself will be the same.
Okay. Chief Dye,
Yes, sir.
you have something to add?
No, I agree with what she just said.
I have one question.
Yes, sir, please.
When you're dealing with this on the street and wherever it's bought, do you find more psychosis or criminal behavior depending on the way this is consumed? Do you find that vapes are more prevalent? Do you find gummies or brownies or drinkables? What's more prevalent in the criminal element in your experience in Allen?
And yes, sir, and thank you for clarifying. In our experience in Allen, the products that we're seeing the most are vapes. Then that would be followed by probably the edibles and the flowers in that order. Just to clarify a little bit too.
And you
Yes, sir, please.
just to point out again, House Bill 28 seeks to ban those things, what you just mentioned.
Yes, sir.
We're clear.
We're
Okay,
aware of
please
that.
proceed.
And yes, sir, we're aware of that. And again, I think the general, maybe the theme of the pushback on the beverages from TPCA is this. All of this, as you all have seen today, is very complicated, very complex, and changing every week. It's new and it's changing, and I think, our hesitation with the beverages is, have we really studied this as well as we should? Or are we maybe rushing into this? Do we need to maybe give this some more time to study on the beverage side? And then certainly, driving while intoxicated is a huge problem in all our communities, and the quick onset of these THC beverages is certainly a concern, because within 10 or 15 minutes of taking it, you're in the car. So we don't really have any way to test that intoxication level yet. So it's creating just additional challenges, and for us, it's so much of an unknown. I understand exactly what the bill says and what the beverage industry is proposing. I just feel like we don't have all the information that we really need at this point.
That's understood. When it comes to someone driving under the influence, so are you saying that if you ask somebody to blow, this wouldn't show up in a blow test?
That is correct.
But it would show up in a blood test?
Well, not necessarily, sir, because we would have to confirm, right now, in a lot of our testing, THC is not going to come out in that type of blood test.
Okay.
The alcohol is a bright line. It's easy to come back on a blood test, so that could be another complication for us.
I'm curious about that one, because as an employer, when I have to drug test my employees, just a urine test, THC being present shows up immediately.
Yes, sir. So for us, the challenge is THC stays in the system a very long time, and there's no bright line percentage like there is with alcohol that is a legal definition of intoxication. See, we don't have that for THC, and we also don't know how long it's been in their system. Now, we have the observations of the driving behavior.
Right, you
and-
can
and
still
the
make them
cues.
say their ABCs backwards.
Absolutely.
and
But that's where
I've
the
heard that happen.
Yes, sir. That's where the THC testing for driving while intoxicated is very difficult for us.
I understand. All right. Members, are there further questions of this panel? Seeing none, thank all of you for being here. Appreciate it. It was a great conversation.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
This one? Chair calls Dr. Timothy Stevenson, Deputy Commissioner for the Consumer Protection Division, Department of State and Health Services. Chair calls Brady Mills, Deputy Assistant Director for Law Enforcement Support, Crime Lab Services, Texas Department of Public Safety. Hang on one second. Just making sure the paperwork's correct. So we're good? Okay. Did you update this? Okay. All right, Chair, or the record shows you are Brady Mills, representing Texas DPS Crime Lab, and you are neutral on the bill, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Record shows you're Timothy Stevenson, representing the Department of State Health Services, and you are neutral on the bill, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Mills, why don't we start with you?
Yes, good morning, Mr. Chairman, Madam Vice Chair, members of the committee. My name is Brady Mills. I'm the Chief of the Crime Laboratories Division for the Texas Department of Public Safety. In that capacity, I represent about 700 forensic scientists that work in our 16 laboratory locations around the state that are supporting law enforcement in the criminal justice system. The testing of marijuana and hemp material has been a challenge for the forensic laboratories around the state because of the requirement to quantitate Delta-9 THC for the purpose of supporting criminal cases. The added time and expense has contributed to backlogs and resource challenges for laboratories here in our state. DPS has reviewed the filed version of HB 28, and from a lab perspective, the bill does assist the forensic analysis of the evidence in crime laboratories. It clarifies and creates regulatory requirements for consumable hemp products. In the last 2 years, we've tested 17,241 vape cases, which were submitted for analysis. These cases take anywhere between 2 to 4 times longer than our standard case. And so that is really what our challenges have been over the last couple of years. So with that, I'm available for any questions the panel may have.
Thank you. Mr. Stevens?
Yes, sir. I'm just here to answer any questions of the committee, sir.
Are you ready?
Yeah.
Mr. Anchia?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Gentlemen, as we wrestle with kind of the range of outcomes of policy calls, everything from outright bans to, aggressive regulation of the marketplace to a carve-out for beverages, have you all done an analysis of what these policy outcomes would do to your required capacity? For example, if we had a total ban, have you looked at that scenario and what it would do, what your projections would be for capacity at a testing facilities or series of testing facilities if we had a highly regulated but still legal outcome that would present a whole different set of requirements for your testing labs? Do you follow my question? Okay. Have you done any analyses on what it would look like to staff up for the different ranges of outcomes?
Yes, sir. I think the difference in terms of regulation within our community depends on the number of products. So right now, there are certainly consumable products, gummies, chocolate bars, those types. There are smokable products, and then there also are drinkable products. All of those are on the market. That's a broader spectrum of products to regulate and test. So just in that respect, the number of products available would impact the breadth of what we're able to do as an agency. The other challenge is really gets specifically to the definition of consumable hemp and the amount of Delta-9 THC. So much hinges on that definition. That's been the challenge right now because we're enjoined in a lawsuit with a temporary restraining order that we can't enforce a limit on Delta-8 THC or other types of THC that might be in the product, either naturally or added back in, synthesized and added back in. So that has limited what we could do as a regulatory agency.
From the forensic laboratory standpoint.
Please state your name.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. Brady Mills, Texas Department of Public Safety. From a forensic science laboratory perspective, a ban of cannabinoids would benefit our laboratory systems because we revert back to testing for just the presence of. When we talk about the different types of cannabinoids that are found in these products, a ban of Delta-8, a ban of Delta-10, that would benefit forensic laboratories so we can assist law enforcement. Keeping the Delta-9 at a 0.3% limit does still require us to quantitate. But it does clear up the fact that the other cannabinoids would be banned. So a ban would allow us to be more effective in our testing because of its due presence of. Even the step where we're just focused on Delta-9 and have a clear definition for the others is a benefit for the forensic laboratories as well.
And have you, and just walk me through what you need in terms of equipment for testing, right? What does a fully built-out lab look like? how expensive is it? What type of human capital do you need working in the lab? And if one of the range of outcomes occurred, for example, a highly regulated, highly taxed, highly professionalized marketplace, is there enough human capital in the marketplace that you could bring into a regulatory agency to effectively execute the testing regime?
Do you want to answer that from a regulatory perspective?
I'll go first and then allow.
And there are a couple of questions in there, so just start with, level set us on what a testing operation looks like.
Right.
And how expensive is that, right? And then secondly, the second question is, if we went to a highly regulated, highly professionalized regulatory approach, what would that do to the scale of the operations you're about to describe? Again, please reiterate your name.
Dr. Tim Stevenson, Dishes. So right now, the cost, ballpark about what we are being charged by our contract laboratory for the food products mentioned, it's about $350 for THCs. It's another $350 for the cannabidiol, CBD, another $350 for the CBG, cannabigerol. So we're looking at over $1,000 per sample, as described in this bill, where the CBG, CBD, and Delta-9 THC would be allowed. To look for all the other synthetics that might be there adds additional costs, so that's per sample.
And so I guess you answered part of the question here, and I'm sorry for interrupting you, but you outsource this essentially
Yes, sir.
to third parties.
And
How big is the third-party testing marketplace? Is it pretty robust in the state, or do you actually have to send these out of state to find enough scale in the testing ecosystem?
we don't have trouble testing the amount of samples that we're doing with our one contract lab. I know there are other contract labs in the state. They use highly complex equipment to get to this level of precision. And in fact, as we look as a regulatory agency on how to implement the bills as written, any cannabinoid, we would ask you to consider what level is you want the lab to test to, because they can find part per billion, literally 1, 2, 3 parts per billion with the type of complicated gas chromatographs, liquid chromatographs that they use in the laboratory. Expensive equipment, but that's what they use. But that part per billion is not going to have any impact on the human body physiologically. So I think setting a limit of what the legislature considers any cannabinoid would probably help us as an agency, so we don't have to answer that and defend it.
So we are testing in-house.
Name?
Oh, sorry, excuse me. Brady Mills, Texas Department of Public Safety.
Thank you.
We are testing in-house. We're testing plant material. We are testing liquids, and we are testing oils. We do outsource edibles. We did go through a process to find an outsourced laboratory for edibles, and we did have to go to an out-of-state laboratory based on some volume. And so we're using a laboratory that's located out of the state of Texas for that type of testing. For in-house testing, for testing liquids and oils, we are using a GC, gas chromatograph. We've got about 30 of those, or 60 to 80 of those around the state. We've got about 169 chemists that are doing this type of test, along with other controlled substance testing in our laboratory system. We ask our chemists to do about 70 cases a year, just as the example of the impact of the cannabinoid testing as it's moved from a presence of THC to a quantitation or semi-quant method for THC. When you look at a vape cartridge case, it used to be, one case was equal to one case. Now it's about one case from a quant perspective is 2 to 4 cases. So it's about twice or 4 times the amount of effort to test these types of materials in our laboratory.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Members of questions of this panel? I've got a couple. Mr. Mills, we'll start with you.
Yes, sir.
You said testing is a challenge trying to determine the amount?
Brady Mills, Texas Department of Public Safety, that is correct. It's the quantitation that is more cumbersome for us to do the testing.
Okay. But this bill, by providing the drinkable exception, by banning the rest of it, you did testify that it would assist the lab.
This would help with edibles. This would also help with the liquids that are in the vape pens. That is absolutely correct.
So would it be, you said you had over 2,000 vape cases?
17,000 vape cases over the last 2 years. Yes,
Okay,
sir.
I misheard that. You have 17 pending that you're testing for now?
Those are the ones that we have tested over the last 2 years.
Over the last 2 years, you've done 17,000 vape cases. So this bill would, by allowing the drinkable Delta 9, that wouldn't cost you or harm you, because that would be paid for under this bill by the manufacturer through a DEA regulated lab. So you would still just be testing illicit
That is
products,
correct. We'd be testing
So
illicit products.
So this bill wouldn't have a fiscal impact on you based on what it's doing?
That
You'd
is-
still have to test the illicit?
That is, yes, sir,
products.
that is correct.
Okay, that's what I was curious about. Mr. Stevenson,
Yes, sir.
I believe you testified that reducing the number of illegal products out there would be helpful to your department as well. Is that correct?
It'd be less complicated for us, yes, sir.
Okay. Is there something you would need from a definition standpoint on what is legal in this bill that would be helpful? I believe I heard you and Mr. Anchia talking about definitions. Does the definition of the cannabinoid that would be legal in a drinkable in House Bill 28, is that clear? Or does that definition need work?
It seems clear, sir. Delta 9 to a certain limit, only CBG or CBD, and no other cannabinoids, whether naturally occurring or added in. If we can all agree on that,
Okay.
that is defensible from my perspective at this point. The part I asked about was the level of detection of any other cannabinoids. So it says no other cannabinoids, no other synthetic. What's the limit of detection you want us as a department to hold them accountable to? Because again, part per billion as one compound in the product breaks down to another compound like CBD, it may in the natural aging process break down into other cannabinoids in very low levels. So if we find those in a product, could have been legitimate when it was manufactured, but over time there's a dissolution and another cannabinoid breaks down from CBD, then it's in violation.
So if we allow CBD and CBG, say for hand cream, and they are not, they're not supposed to have anything in them to get you high. Do you think it's possible that somebody with a science kit and a lab coat could alter those products to cause intoxication?
To that specific product, I couldn't really answer that. I do know it's fairly easy to take CBD and in the process of heat and a catalyst and solvents to create other THCs from that.
Thank you very much. This, I think probably, Chief Mills, this is for you. So with the 2018 Farm Bill and Interstate Commerce Act, would an outright ban stop somebody from ordering a drinkable on Amazon and having it shipped to Texas?
I don't believe that. I believe that's correct. They would still have the opportunity to find other opportunities to buy those products.
So these manufacturers in Texas that are making drinkables and for sale in Texas, banning that wouldn't stop somebody who wanted to have a drinky from getting it on Amazon come to Texas.
We have seen that the illicit market does exist in the states where they have it legalized and also in states where they have it illegal.
Right. But my question is, would an outright ban stop somebody from getting on Amazon and ordering a case of drinkable THC and having it shipped to their house?
I believe that they'd still be able to do that, yes, sir.
They would still be able to do that. Thank you for answering that question. Members, are any other questions for this panel? Oh, Ms. Hull.
Based, kind of piggybacking off of that question, so does that mean that it would just be Texas businesses who could not produce and manufacture that, but other states that are not regulated and we don't know what they do? We have no clue what's in that product, that they could buy that on Amazon, but they couldn't buy products made in Texas. Is that correct?
That is a positive assumption. I believe that is absolutely, that would be correct.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Smith?
Falling back on the Amazon question, could the state regulate what could be sold, brought into Texas under Amazon or something like that?
I don't know the answer to that from a forensic lab perspective, and I don't know if the regulatory concept would be able to answer that.
Sir, Tim Stevenson, Dishes. I think it would be incredibly hard to regulate what people receive in the mail.
I mean, we could make it illegal, I assume.
Yes, sir.
And people who received it would be breaking Texas law. Okay. And it would be, I assume, difficult to enforce.
And that's the issue, yes, sir, from my hat.
So, I guess the question would be, because some states that don't have an agreement with Texas can't ship their alcohol products into Texas. Is that because of the three-tier system?
I don't know the answer to that, sir.
We're going to find somebody that does. Is there any other questions? Oh, Mr. Phelan.
And maybe this is for Mr. Stevenson. Going back to you have not seen these photos of the packages of Skittles and candy and chips, like the Frito-Lay chili cheese that is not, maybe it is a Frito chili cheese, but it has THC in it. Do we not have a deceptive trade, any type of regulation in the state of Texas that prohibits this type of packaging? And I just can't get around how Pringles and Frito-Lay allow this to occur in the state of Texas. But is there not something that, in your agency that could do something about this? I mean, this is obviously deceptive packaging.
I believe if we saw the label and looked specifically at the fine print, it would say certain ingredients are in there that would, therefore, we couldn't take action on those as marketed right now.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Members? Oh, Mr.
Just really
Chairman,
quickly, to Speaker Phelan's question, I know that Frito-Lay's based in North Texas. They work really, really hard to try to make sure that their brand is not adversely impacted by these knockoffs. Like, they file suit all the time, but it's a kind of a whack-a-mole problem, and it ends up in the court. It's intellectual property that they're trying to protect. It's just cumbersome. But that Weedos thing is, I know, something that, you know, is top of mind to that company. I've talked to their executive leadership on this issue.
members, other questions of this panel? Seeing none, thank you for being here. Appreciate your testimony. Okay. Chair calls Thomas Graham, Executive Director, Texas Alcohol and Beverage Commission. Chair calls James Pearson, General Counsel, Texas Alcohol and Beverage Commission. Chair calls Matthew Cherry, Senior Counsel, Texas Alcohol and Beverage Commission. The Texas Alcohol and Beverage Commission should be well covered. Director Graham, we show you as Thomas Graham, representing TABC, and you're neutral on the bill, is that correct?
Yes, Chairman, that's correct.
Matthew Cherry, we show you as Matthew Cherry, representing TABC, and you're neutral on the bill.
Yes, sir.
Is that correct? We show James Pearson, we show you as James Pearson representing TABC, and you're neutral on the bill. Is that also correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Director Graham, would you like to start?
Chairman, thank you for having us today. My name is Thomas Graham. I'm the Executive Director of the Texas Alcoholic Beverage Commission. I've brought the smart people with me today, so hopefully any questions you have for us, we can answer.
Thank you. Mr. Pearson?
Nothing to add to that, sir.
Mr. Cherry?
I think that covers it for the moment, sir.
Okay. Members, there are questions of this panel? Ms. Hernandez?
Director Graham, good morning. Thank you for being here. I know in another committee, we talked about in the work that TABC does, that you're able to pursue cases based on any alcohol code violations, but that you're not able to do anything with respect to THC. Could you give us some more information on that?
Absolutely. Vice Chair, thank you for the question. At this moment, we just regulate the alcoholic beverages. And we would, of course, if we went into a location that was selling an illegal product or a drug, we would take action against that location, maybe against their permit for selling, just like if they were selling some other kind of narcotic. With the products in question today, they aren't considered illegal for us at this point. So we don't have any regulatory authority in those circumstances.
Members? Oh, Mr. Turner?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So under House Bill 28, which we're hearing now, the drinks would be permitted to be sold in package stores, is my understanding of the bill. What would that look like for TABC? If this bill became law and y'all were granted regulatory oversight of this one particular set of products, what would you have to do, what would TABC have to do to sort of stand up its regulatory framework to be able to implement the bill?
Thank you for the question. We would have to create a permit and licensing system based on the layout of the bill, which would regulate it really like a product that's an alcoholic beverage. So it would be sold in the locations that already have alcoholic beverage permits. They'd have to get an additional CBD permit to sell hemp beverages. So it would take some time, obviously, to stand that up, get those permits available out there. It would be theoretically in locations that we're already at. So right now, the state of Texas has about 58,000 licensed locations for selling alcoholic beverages. In this bill, it's going to limit how many locations could actually sell it. If we're looking at package stores only, we're talking more like 2,500 locations currently under law. But the bill also gets into allowing mixed beverages, private clubs, and some on-premise retailers to sell the products as well. So we're talking about locations that already have alcohol permits with us. I don't foresee, I can't predict what the market's going to do, but I do think that will limit how many locations are selling these products to something similar to what's in the market today with alcoholic beverages.
Okay. And would TABC's role be simply to license and then regulate the retailer or the permit holder, or would you also have a role in regulating or testing or otherwise analyzing the actual contents of the beverage?
After reading through the sub, with the way that we understand it is that the testing piece of it we wouldn't be doing. Instead, before you could bring a product into market as a producer, you'd have to go to the Department of Health and Human Services and have them test that product. What we do currently with alcoholic beverages, if we get a complaint that maybe they're mislabeled or there's more alcohol in there than they say there is, we have a lab and we can do that testing. We're not set up to do the testing for the hemp beverages.
Okay.
So we could go into the store, we would buy the product or seize it, however we needed to take action, and then take it to one of the laboratories that are made for testing this product. And based on those results, we could take administrative action to suspend or take away their permit.
Okay, so currently you do test alcoholic beverages if there's a need?
Yes, sir.
If there's a question raised. But under this bill, you could confiscate the product, but then you'd have to send it over to dishes for them to test. Is that right?
Yes, or a DPS lab. Yes, sir.
Or DPS, right, okay. Okay, thank you.
Speaker Fields.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Regarding other states, do some just strictly keep the THC beverages? Let's say it's not a single serve, let's say it's a multi-serve, bottle or whatever. Is that limited to what would be considered a traditional liquor store, or do they have it in bars and restaurants? How's it treated? How do other states treat that particular product?
Appreciate the question. I'm not familiar with what all the other states are doing. I have spoken to states like Arizona, where cannabis is legal, and this market has popped up, and they're trying to decide whether they're going to ban it or allow for it and regulate it like alcohol. And that's been a challenge for some of those agencies out there. The way I would envision this, based on 28, and maybe we have to do some rules, we'll look more at the sub, but let's say you had a product that was a 750 ml container. The way that this sub is set up is the consumer could not buy more than 10 milligrams a day. Well, if you've got a 750 milliliter bottle, it's going to have multiple servings of that 10 milligram in it. So I don't envision that being able to be sold to the consumer under the sub. Instead, what would have to happen is that could be sold to like a mixed beverage restaurant who already buys 750 mLs, of course, of spirits and mixes drinks. It would have to be something similar to that so that they could limit how many ounces they're providing based on the milligram per ounce to consumers.
All right, that brings me to the next question. What is the net effect on the consumer when you are mixing what would be the 750 milliliter bottle, that product, with, say, an alcoholic beverage? Like, you put them both in the same glass, what does that do to the consumer? What impact does it have on their?
I would have to defer to the doctor on that, but I can say the way this sub is set up, this committee sub, it prohibits mixing the two together by one of our licensees. So if this did pass and we found that that was happening, we would go after them administratively at a minimum to make it stop.
Thank you.
Members, are there other questions of this panel? I've got a couple. Going back to the last panel, we talked about interstate commerce. Can one of you explain I know that certain states can't ship alcohol made in their state into Texas. How's that controlled and how's that regulated with TABC?
Thank you, Chairman. Currently, wine from a winery that has a permit with us can legally be shipped to the end consumer in the state of Texas. Outside of that, alcoholic beverages are not legally allowed to be shipped to consumers in the state. So I can't go online legally and buy an alcoholic beverage from a liquor store in another state. Those products are shipped through carriers who hold a permit with us, whether it be FedEx, DPS, not DPS, but FedEx or any of those other folks. It's difficult now for us to regulate the alcoholic beverages coming into the market. We see a large amount of alcoholic beverages coming in, and when we look at these reports and we know that it's where it's coming from, we will reach out to the carrier and have them stop shipping from that location, from that account holder. We'll reach out to the state regulator as well. The problem is a lot of these businesses will close that business account with FedEx and open it next door, or they'll change their name and they'll continue to ship. So because they're out of state and those sources are coming into the state, it's a hard thing to regulate.
Understood. So when it comes to regulating, if an outright ban happened, just prohibition on hemp, there would be nothing to stop, not even TABC to call the carrier or the other state that's providing the product. And it sounds to me like it's difficult when alcohol, when there's a regulatory body to check up on this stuff and actually stop bad behavior. So without TABC having regulatory authority over hemp-based drinks, there would be there would be no body to stop, no regulatory body to try to prohibit somebody from ordering THC drinks on Amazon and coming in. Is that correct?
We wouldn't have the authority to do it. Yes, sir.
You would have the authority to do that if this bill was to become law. Okay. The other thing, I did want to ask you. You have had a chance to, or all of you, I hope, have had a chance to review the sub.
Yes, sir.
Well, I know. We just got it this morning. So I just want to make sure. Page 14, it speaks to TABC would be required to train people who sell these products? Would you envision that training, going back to Speaker Phelan's question about dispensing a 750 milliliter bottle in a bar, would part of that training include, hey, you can't mix it with vodka?
Yes, sir, it would. We would put together a program just like we have for bars and restaurants and sellers, retailers of alcohol now, that they can send their employees to for education on how to legally serve and dispense products.
So while you don't have that program stood up currently for THC drinks, it would follow along with what you're doing in the alcohol space. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, it would.
Thank you very much. Members, other questions of this panel? Seeing none, thank you all for being here. Appreciate your testimony.
Thank you.
So a point of reference, there is an additional overflow room in E1010. All right, that concludes our invited testimony. We'll start with public testimony at this time. Chair calls David Muckpo. Chair calls Susan Hayes. Chair calls Benjamin Meggs. Chair calls Andrea Steele. Mr. Muckpo, record shows you are David Muckpo? Is that saying that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, you're David Muckpo. You're here on behalf of yourself, and you are for the bill. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
You have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman King, committee members. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak today on why sensible regulation in the hemp space is the best pathway forward for Texas. My name is David Muckpo. I operate Pamos, a low-dose hemp beverage brand sold across Texas, as well as a board member for CABA, advocating for responsible hemp beverage regulations nationwide. I want to touch on 2 numbers that keep coming up: 8,000 retail locations and $8 billion. With the 8,000 retail locations, I believe we do have consensus that having 8,000 retail locations pop up with little to no regulation or guardrails is not what's in the best interests of Texan consumers, or to be frank, our industry itself. I support everybody in this room looking to address those guardrails and make sure consumer safety is a priority. $8 billion. Billions of dollars of consumer demand does not just go away because we want it to. That number shows that everybody in this room has a colleague, a family member, and a friend who use products like ours in their daily life. If we ban everything on the market and don't have a solution for that $8 billion, then all we are doing is creating a bigger problem. A problem for public safety, a problem for health and wellness, a problem with increased crime, a problem for millions of Texans who consume and want access to low-dose hemp THC products would find themselves suddenly criminalized as we push this entire industry to the black market, which we know will have no regard for consumer safety whatsoever. Prohibition simply doesn't work. It didn't work in alcohol, and it hasn't worked in cannabis, where over 70% of the sales nationwide of the $91 billion are still in the illicit market. We have the ability to address consumer safety while still providing a solution for those millions of Texans who want access to hemp. I'm here in support of HB 28 as a platform to work on sensible regulations with this committee. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Members or questions of this witness? Seeing none, Chair calls Susan Hayes. Susan Hayes. We show you as Susan Hayes. You're representing Village Farms and yourself, and you're neutral on the bill. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Please proceed.
All right, my name is Susan Hayes. I am a appellate attorney by trade. I've been practicing cannabis law for about 10 years. I am the public representative to DPS's TCUP working group to advise it. And I also was very involved in the passage of the hemp bill in 2019 and familiar with that legislative history. I'm having passed out for you a cheat sheet to help you follow some of this language, and a little bit of glossary and a grid laying out which of these compounds are natural, intoxicating, not intoxicating, synthetic, semi-synthetic. And I'm going to clarify these terms because I've had a brief glance at the committee substitute, and my terminology is different when it's in the bill. What I mean by synthetic are things that are both novel, that is, not occurring in nature, and produced in a lab. The bill refers to that as artificial, from what I've seen. What I mean by semi-synthetic, and scratch out artificial, is something that does occur in nature but is commonly produced by converting another cannabinoid in the industry. The items outlined in red are the ones you need to worry about. I'm on the bill because it is banning a lot of non-intoxicating things and things that are useful to people and common in the industry and have been. I also brought you show and tell to see what we're talking about. We're concerned about children being attracted. This is what's in the gas stations. These are 200 milligram dummies, way too high of a dose. And my joke is if the packaging's cheesy, don't take it. Here's a drink. I'm a fan, I get it. Here's what CBD gummies look like. These are sleep gummies with a little bit of THC in them. Here's a tincture. You'll hear about full spectrum CBD today. Full spectrum means it is a very natural extract, so it contains the other minor cannabinoids, terpenes, flavonoids, other things in the plant. Widely believed this is far better for you and more effective for children with seizures, items like that.
Thank you, Ms. Hayes, for your testimony, but you're going to get a question.
All right.
Has anybody got one? Mr. Phelan?
Well, I'd like you to continue, especially with that last product.
Yes.
Okay. That right there, is that bill coming up later today, or HB 28 were to pass, would that be legal or illegal?
It would be a crime.
That would be a crime.
Right.
And that is something that our current compassionate use program does not allow for, is that correct?
No, let me give a little historical context to make this make sense, because it is incredibly confusing.
Yes, it is.
When compassionate use first passed, this was a controlled substance. It was considered marijuana. The Farm Bill and the Texas Hemp Bill changed that. It is no longer a controlled substance. And I liken this to similar to buying over-the-counter the medicine. I can buy aspirin in the store, I can buy 200 milligram ibuprofen in the store. But if I need stronger stuff, Motrin 800 milligram, I need a prescription. Teacups for the stronger stuff. This should not be a crime. There's not side effects, it's not going to make anybody sick. But for some people who have problems with their endocannabinoid system, it's a life changer. Whether that's just sleep, or that's a child who has seizures, and if you put it in a heavily regulated system like TCUP, the price goes up. And TCUP only has 3, really 2.5 licensees. It's not accessible around the state, and that also drives up the price.
What does that cost right now?
There are some that can answer that better than me, but my guess is depending on how many milligrams of CBD is in it, $30. This is only $40 because the market's been flooded with it.
So if that were in teacup, what would it cost?
With this, I don't know off the top of my head. I do recall early on close to $100. I don't know where they are now, and I can hear people in the audience who can answer that question when they get up here.
All right, we'll ask them. Thank you.
Yeah.
Ms. Gentile.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Hayes, thanks for being here today. I want to understand from the chart, what I think is a helpful chart. As policymakers, what we're trying to get at here, it is your testimony that the underlying bill would outlaw non-intoxicating natural products like the full spectrum hemp, the broad spectrum hemp, the CBD, CBDA, CBDV, CBG, and I can go down that list, but those things you believe should not be outlawed, but that this bill may be overbroad and picks
Correct.
them up. Is that correct?
That is correct. And of the many ironies for the bill missing the mark, by only allowing the isolates, the CBD, CBG, and some THC, you're requiring more manufacturing and chemical alteration to strip out all these other healthy things that are in a natural extract like this in order to be compliant. And that's-
If I'm hearing you correctly, an outcome of outlawing these things is that not only does it sort of drive it underground, it creates a perverse incentive to create more synthetic product.
I'm going to be very careful with my
Sorry,
vocabulary.
thank you. Please do. Intoxicating
And
synthetic?
how the bill defines it is synthetic because it is manipulated. I mean, actually, I'm going to back up from even that. I don't think it falls under the bill's definition, but to just have an isolate, to just pull out the CBD, CBG, and/or THC, you have to go through more manufacturing. And the more manufacturing, the more odds for human error. And what people are getting isn't as good for them as the fully natural product. You know, and you will hear the phrase entourage effect as this testimony goes on. This plant was meant to be taken all as a whole. It works better on our bodies when it comes with the minor cannabinoids, the terpenes, the flavonoids. You know, terpenes and flavonoids are in food. They're things that are good for us. And this bill would require it to be stripped down to the bone, to just a few cannabinoids, because if I'm understanding the testimony so far, our law enforcement apparatus is overwhelmed. The better policy is to fund our forensic labs fully. Other states do this all the time, regulating cannabis. I've been studying what other states do with this cannabis and how to regulate it for 10 years now. It is no big deal to test a full spectrum of what's in a product. Nevada does it, Canada does it, Colorado does it, Canada does it too. And it shouldn't cost $1,000, like Dishes testified. Somebody has a hell of a contract with the state to being paid that much. Because the industry does it all the time. It's also not, and you'll see on each of these products, there's a QR code. That links to the certificate of the analysis. Current Texas law from 2019 requires that each hemp product by batch, meaning a manufacturing batch. I'm sorry, Darby isn't here because he had that question about what is a batch. Be tested. That link, and this was I remember having these discussions in 2019 with Senator Perry's office so the consumers would know what they're getting. Now, there's a lot of non-compliance. That's one way I test when I'm in stores. Does the QR code work? These tend not to work. These do.
As we're thinking about the range of outcomes in regulation, I don't know if you were here when I visited with some of the state regulators, both the lab and Dishes about this. I think we're trying to balance the fact that this massive market exists, right? We've heard testimony that the market exists. Products tend to find their way to market,
Yes.
right? It is our role to try to maximize the social good, right, from products finding their way to market. At the same time, do it transparently and legally in our regulatory regime. We also have to be cognizant of the fact that any market participants want to maximize their profits, right? And oftentimes will maximize profits and then socialize costs. That happens in a bunch of different industries throughout this state. And so because, and that was the reason I was visiting with the folks about the testing labs, because that is a socialized cost of this market activity, right? And so the question is, as we're trying to achieve a market equilibrium here that provides positive health benefits, a social good, aligns interests so that people do not unnecessarily socialize costs, or market participants don't socialize costs, and at the same time, not drive up the costs in the marketplace so much so that the black market then flourishes.
Correct.
Right? It's a tricky regulatory balance that we face. What is confusing to me in trying to achieve that market equilibrium is that in this bill, we would only be allowing one method of delivery system, which is relatively narrow, the can, and, for example, a beverage, yes, but then we're saying an oil, no.
Correct.
And how do we justify that in that regulatory, balance that we're trying to achieve? How do you justify saying, hey, you can drink it, you can put it in your mouth and drink it, but you can't put it in your mouth under your tongue as an oil, which is the way I understand tinctures work?
I can't fathom a way to justify it. And I understand the concern about things that are attractive to children. Look at this packaging. If this isn't here, where does the child go? The boring-looking container of gummies that looks like something that's a vitamin, or the pretty can? And again, all for it here, personally. To carve off these delivery systems as a crime and this is okay makes no sense to me. There are plenty of good manufacturers and retailers in this state. Where Texas has failed is getting this regulatory regime in place. And I absolutely laud what 28 is trying to do to put a regulatory regime in place. But the state needs to do it better and needs to understand testing is something you cannot outsource out of state and be able to do it right. And I'll give you an example of what I mean by that. I spent some time as a general counsel of a company in Nevada as Nevada was rolling out adult use legalization, which was a great education because it was every 2 weeks, new regulations. The state had 8 licensed labs then. In the less than a year I was in Nevada, 2 of them got caught cheating. And lab fraud is an issue in the industry. And I understand the committee substitute is just in-state DEA registered labs, am I correct? DEA registered labs, fine, but there's some good labs out of state. And there is a way to control that. I know there's concern and angst that if we let out-of-state things happen, we can't regulate it. That's just not true. We already do it in the current hemp program. Current hemp program, the labs register with the Department of Agriculture, but there's no oversight. You make any lab who wants to test products who come into Texas be licensed in Texas, even if they're located in Denver. And then you've got to test them. You've got to check their work. And if you bust them cheating, yank their license, recall the products with their license number on them. That creates the economic incentive to keep people from cheating, but it also allows that market equilibrium, that the good actors can rise to the top. And I think it was, I can't remember if it was you, Chairman King, or Phelan, who had the question about in-state manufacturers being forced out, and then out-of-state manufacturers are getting Amazoned or Alibaba'd in. That's a terrible outcome. You're not going to be able to make sure the products here are safe and effective with that kind of regulatory regime.
Thanks for the answers.
All right.
Mr. Guillen has a question before we move on.
So, stuff in red that you call intoxicating and that are under the columns for semi-synthetic or artificial, and then another column under synthetic, are those allowed today or are they banned today?
I'm an appellate lawyer. I can write that brief both ways. But under the Controlled Substance Act, I think some of them are illegal, but you don't have the will in prosecutors and law enforcement to go after them. And specifically, the Controlled Substance Act has a whole paragraph on tetrahydrocannabinols other than marijuana, including, not limited to, but including Delta-3, Delta-6, et cetera. That's there. And I also get this worry from the government that if we can't keep up with all these new things they're inventing, so we should just ban everything. A sentence I've heard in the Senate side is if I can't understand it, I should ban it. If you can't understand it, you're not going to be able to ban it effectively. The state needs to understand it. And other states have already accomplished this goal by specifying you can have these naturally occurring, non-intoxicating cannabinoids and a tad of THC, and everything else is no-go. It's not that hard to do. But you do also have to invest in the enforcement, get that. It's very possible to accomplish this and do what other states have already been doing without throwing these other things out because you're worried about this. But then you're just going to allow the cans.
Thank you.
Mr. Anchia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just one follow-up. As we're looking to achieve this market equilibrium, what state should we be looking at for referential regulatory regime?
I'm familiar with some more than others, and one statute I've looked at more because I know a lot of work went into it is Colorado's. Colorado saw this intoxicating hemp issue coming 6 years ago. They passed a bill to create an advisory committee, staffed it with scientists, marijuana business people, hemp business people, moms who hated everything, moms who wanted it because it was, this was good for their kids with seizures, and they studied it and, let the science and facts drive the policy. And because it's hard to write a bill, once they came to a political consensus, that committee spent over 100 hours in meetings. They wrote a model bill, it passed in close to final form. And that's where I took my list of intoxicating versus non-intoxicating because I trust their work. And on the beverage side, that is newer. I can't cite a state that I know that I've studied and can say they've done it right, but it's similar. You cap your THC. You understand when THC is mixed with CBD, it's not as intoxicating. And I do think it's a great idea to take that regulatory infrastructure we already have with TABC because they have boots on the ground around the state, which DISHES lacks, and you regulate it. You use the packaging to tell you this is legit or this is not. We've been concerned about law enforcement being able to tell at a roadside, is this thing legal or not? If they're educated about what's the correct packaging for Texas, then they know this is something that came from a legitimate Texas manufacturer or retailer and not something that's been bootlegged out of state from California.
Thank you.
Mr. Raymond.
Hey, Susan. Finish telling us then, what did they do in Colorado?
Colorado did their study, did a model bill. They specify in statute intoxicating, non-intoxicating, and then what's synthetic. The way they handle the problem of new things being invented in the market, because the marketplace will be forever inventive, is if it's on the approved list of non-intoxicating, then you may produce it. If it's on the definitely intoxicating list, you may not produce it. And if it's anything new, you have to come ask the state for permission first. And it's that third category that catches new things that the legislature can't keep up with because you only meet every 2 years and the market will always be innovating faster.
So if we had the Colorado law in place in Texas, how would things be different right now?
Well, if we had had that in place the last 4 years, you wouldn't have this everywhere, for one. And, in these, most of what I've seen in stores, they're not just Delta-9, they're a cocktail of synthesized natural cannabinoids like Delta-9, but also completely novel synthesized cannabinoids that we don't have a history of human beings taking and may or may not know what it's going to do to people.
So we wouldn't have synthetic, or does Colorado have some synthetic that has been approved by the state, is that what you're saying, or?
And I'm going to be, again, careful about the vocabulary words. If you mean something that's manufactured, I can't recall off the top of my head if they allow the manufacturing, and actually, as I recall, they do, because some cannabinoids are rare enough in the plant, like CBN or THCV, and even though that starts with the letters THC, it's not intoxicating. And there's some great science on it for managing weight loss, diabetes. I just saw one this last week, because I'm the kind of nerd who searches PubMed for fun, the NIH database, of THCV being used as an antipsychotic. And it is often manufactured from an existing cannabinoid because it's cheaper than trying to extract it from the plant. And that's a category that Colorado calls semi-synthetic.
So do you know, maybe the chief, I wish the chief was back up on the panel, but.
Chief Nye?
Yeah.
From Allen.
How the law enforcement community in Colorado feel about the existing laws in Colorado?
I don't know, but I'll find out.
It might be helpful to the
Yeah.
chairman.
Certainly.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you.
Members, there are other questions of this, of Ms. Hayes. Ms. Hayes, would you mind if Riley borrows your props for a minute so I can see them?
Yeah.
We're not popping any tops.
Did you count them?
Thank you. We'll return them to you.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely. I see they are gluten-free. So, Ms. Hayes,
Yes, sir.
I think you testified, like if you buy this, that QR code's gonna work,
Yeah,
correct? But if you buy this, probably not,
probably not. Or
because we really don't know what's in this.
another tell is it should be batch specific. So if you go to a certificate of analysis that's 3 years old, it's not for that batch.
Did you buy this way?
No, I actually.
Did it roll around in somebody's pickup?
Truth be told, it's been in my bag for a while. Truth be told, I took that off of a friend of mine I put in rehab who was drinking too much and taking a lot of high-dose gummies.
Okay. All right.
And
And then this tincture, that is, it is used for kids with anxiety or seizures or that kind of thing.
I've been giving the gummy form to my mother who has dementia to try to help her anxiety.
Okay? And the QR code works on this one. This is legit. This is medicine.
Yes,
This is not.
correct.
And then, this is an empty one, but it was for sleep gummies?
Yeah, those are my favorite sleep gummies. That's why it's empty.
That's why it's empty.
Yeah.
All right. So what's the milligram in this one? 30 gummies.
My reading glasses aren't that good.
Evidently mine aren't either.
May I approach?
Yes, please.
That is 5 milligrams of CBN,
Okay.
25 of CBD, and 5 milligrams of THC in full spectrum. So it's going to have minor cannabinoids, terpenes, flavonoids in it.
Okay. Thank you for that. All right. At this time, sir, Mr. Metcalf has a question for you. Duet.
Thank you.
Just to keep us on track, please say your name again.
Susan Hayes.
Thank you, Ms. Hayes. So, just so I'm clear, you can buy this where?
I probably got that in a gas station, or I may have gotten it in a liquor store, I can't remember. But I took it out of my refrigerator this morning.
It's still cold.
Yeah.
So, you can buy this at a package store, correct?
Yeah, I believe that Specs and Total Wine carry that brand as well.
And you can buy it at a supermarket, gas station.
I haven't seen them in supermarkets, but I have seen them in gas stations and in a fancy hotel gift shop.
Where do you buy these? Like, is this at a gas station too? or-
No, I got those from my client, but they also ship it online, and I believe they sell to some boutique stores in Texas.
The vape shops that I see everywhere, do they carry this kind of stuff?
Typically, no. And I go in them and look and see, and you don't see what I think of as a boutique hemp shop higher quality product in most of the vape shops. You see things that I can tell came from out of state and aren't from Texas manufacturers.
Where's the eyedropper thing?
It's down there.
Okay, that's fine, keep it down. Where do you get that? Is that
The
prescription?
tincture's also a Village Farms subsidiary product. So that is sold online in Texas, and I think also sold through some boutique stores.
But that's not considered in our regulated industry part as far as our compassionate use program?
No, because of it's a hemp-derived product with less than 0.3% THC. And absolutely agreed that any consumable percentage makes no sense. It should be milligram caps. And same with the compassionate use program, which is currently at 1% THC.
And what is that one?
In terms of percent or milligrams?
Percent, I guess.
Less than 0.3%.
Okay. Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I've got one more question. And I do appreciate you bringing this stuff because, as you can tell, we're not, some of these people may be well-versed in this and are lying about it, but I'm not. I would like to know, though, because you mentioned these vape shops. I've heard a lot of talk about vape pens coming in from other states and even other countries, and largely China. I noticed you did not bring that example up. Are those a problem?
Vape pens are what scare me the most.
Okay.
And let me give you an example. And I helped put on a cannabis policy conference at A&M last fall and moderated a panel on lab testing. And again, labs are the key to all of this. I encourage y'all to talk to Peter Stout at the Houston Crime Lab. He's very knowledgeable. And we had the former head regulator from Nevada and a gentleman from a private lab who's been studying mass data points from lab testing from other states, named Yasha Khan. And the question I posed to them is, let's say you've got a couple high school kids hitting a black market vape, one of them came up with, behind high school, and they collapse, frothing, maybe seizing. And I wasn't taking that example to be fanciful. I was thinking about the Uvalde issue, which happened before the pandemic, where some people around the country were severely injured and died from bad vape pens that turned out to be black market THC vape pens adulterated with vitamin E acetate. And my question to them is, if that happens, what tools does the state of Texas have in its toolbox to figure out what those kids just took so they get proper medical treatment, trace it back to its source so it can be removed from the stream of commerce? And the answer I got was, goose egg, nothing. I'm really shocked to learn how little we have in terms of tools for dangerous drugs that are on the streets, whether it's the overdoses that were happening in downtown Austin a year and a half ago or so from bad street drugs, and in particularly vape pens. And vape pens are scarier to me because you can put anything in them. And we currently so underfund our forensic labs that they don't have the tools to effectively and quickly test for mystery substances. Mystery substances are harder to test for than, I know this is a CBD tincture and I'm looking for CBD, and their level. That's the public health danger. It's not hemp products and not natural hemp products. It's the other things. And that's where the state should be focusing its efforts. And I'm barely skimming the committee substitute because I finally got somebody to slip me a copy. But I heard you mention there was some tax money in there. Send some of that to the forensic crime labs. That's how, instead of doing this backdoor grant monies to local law enforcement, beef up the labs in the first place, because that will help not just black market bad cannabis products, or adulterated cannabis products, I should say, but also our state's issue with fentanyl, rape kits, everything else.
So one thing you just said, and I'm glad we went down this line of questioning, because the unknown origin vape pens seem to they certainly cause me the most concern when I see kids on these things, and they don't know what's in them, besides whether it's the synthetic hemp or what else is in that thing? What else is making it fire up and create the vape, right? And what we are seeking to do, just to be clear here, it appears to me, even on the products that you showed us, and I really appreciate you bringing them. I mean, anytime we get that kind of visual aid, I think it's helpful. But it appears to me the products that you have shown us that are legit.
Yeah.
The packaging, the amount is safe. It appears to be safe. The other stuff doesn't appear to be safe. We're seeking to get rid of everything that's unsafe, and while I do understand the argument of you're picking the drinks over these other things, it's my opinion that we have an elephant here, and trying to eat the elephant more than one bite at a time also causes a problem, but the packaging on the drink and the testing that has gone into that product seems to be far above this.
Certainly.
Is that correct? Or the vape pen that we don't have an example of, and I don't need one. I just would that be fair?
It'd be fair, but it's also fair to say for the established hemp product companies who make gummies or tinctures, other delivery forms, they're ahead of the beverages. They've been doing it longer.
Okay. Well, here's the just for a point of clarification, then Mr. McQueenie has a question because you asked about the tax and the fee money. A third would go to TABC, a third would go to DSHS, and a third to support opioid and narcotic response by local law enforcement. So that's with just clarification, that's what the sub calls for how the money to be split up. Mr. McQueenie.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Regarding these vape pens, do you have a suggestion for the illicit vape industry as it pertains to this product line? I mean, is there a suggestion out there of what you're seeing? I mean,
Sorry, a suggestion.
A suggestion from regulation or a suggestion on how to enforce it? I mean, it seems that these vapes are a massive problem. I agree with the chairman. And how do you know what's in that vape, if it's a legitimate one or a THC one, if it's from China, if it was made in, Fort Worth? Do you have any suggestions, or is there any way to follow up on that?
And you also have a problem with teenagers getting in serious trouble and being charged with felonies because they do what teenage boys do, and that is dumb things. And
I've got a teenage boy, I'm well aware.
I used to run around a lot of them when I
I'm
was
going
a
to pull this
teenager.
footage up for, no.
And that's unfair. This harsh criminalization on kids or anyone else who isn't getting the consumer education. And there are a wide spectrum of vape pens. There are cheap vape pens from China that maybe the temperature of the product's heated at makes a big difference. That was part of the issue with vitamin E acetate. When vitamin E acetate is heated to a certain temperature, it converts to a very dangerous substance, and it should never be ingested into the lungs. Some terpenes, when heated to high temperatures, can become benzene. So the pen itself, the mechanics, are also important, not just the stuff that's going inside of it or the oil that's going inside of it. To effectively regulate including ban things, you have to be able to regulate in the first place, if that makes any sense. Because you're never, ever, ever going to get rid of it all by banning it. But when you know what a good product looks like, when law enforcement knows, one issue when hemp passed, I tried to work on, hey, can we educate local law enforcement so some poor truck driver with a load of hemp biomass doesn't go to jail? There was no system for educating them. It's just whether the random continuing education class they went to would teach them. I couldn't get DPS to put on their website what the rules were. You can visually tell the difference between these two. With vape pens, that is harder, but if you've got a system where they're accessible to the people who use them and like them, that's where more of the market is going to go. That may not keep it out of the hands of kids, but it's better than them ordering things off Alibaba where we don't know where they came from. And I wish I had a magic answer to that. I think that's probably the hardest
It's
problem
pretty
to
clear
solve.
that that with your line of answers, that you are very concerned about these vape pens and the illicit market there and the ability to regulate it. So that's, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Phelan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Okay, I have a good idea what's going to happen to you if you take that gummy right there.
This one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. What happens to the consumer with the oil? Is that something you take and you can drive a car, or you can go teach a class, or, I mean, what does that do to the average person?
This one is CBD with some CBN. And how it affects people depends on their own chemistry. It also depends, and this is true of any cannabinoids, it also depends on our own endocannabinoid system. You know, my running joke is my mother and Willie Nelson have a very different endocannabinoid system. People who have severe medical issues, and I'm going to take THC as an example, because these aren't intoxicating products at all. And this goes to dosing. And I know you'll have a cap in this bill. There's a teacup bill with some caps in it. What is an appropriate dose for people depends on their personal body chemistry and their physical condition. And I'll give you an example. I've been doing this work, I've gotten to know a family in East Texas who had a daughter with severe Tourette's. Couldn't leave the house for 2 years. Her body ticking was so violent when she's 13, 14 years old. And they gave her THC oil illegally. And it took 25 milligrams a day to get her out of that condition. But that dose did not make her high. 25 milligrams would put me in bed for a week. And then once she came out of that condition, she takes 5 milligrams a day to maintain. 5 milligrams of THC alone would make me plenty high, doesn't make her high, because her endocannabinoid system's out of whack. And the cannabinoids coming in evens her up. Now, if I already have an even cannabinoid system, it's going to make me a little high, depending on the dose. CBD does have, people misuse the term psychoactive. Psychoactive doesn't mean make you high, it means it affects how you feel. CBD can change how you feel. It makes people feel better. The first time I took a fairly high dose of it drinking a tea at a boutique off 6th Street, and as I was driving myself home across the river and thought, did this make me feel different? I realized, oh, I'm not all pissed off at the traffic. It just sort of literally makes you chill out a little bit and relax a little bit.
So back, I believe our compassionate use program started about 2015?
Yes, 2015.
We have not expanded it very much.
No.
It's very expensive, very
Yes.
limited entry. I'm very, I was a freshman in the House voting for compassionate use. Growing up, I didn't know the difference between oregano and weed, but I knew it was the right thing to do. You talk to individuals who have severe disabilities, and it was it could have been a game changer. Now, I don't think we're there yet with our own compassionate use program, but it does certainly seem like there are products currently on the market that are legal now, maybe not legal at the end of this session, that fill in the gaps of the compassionate use program. Is that a fair statement?
That is absolutely a fair statement. And the testimony on these bills in the Senate, or the Senate SB 3, almost every witness talked about medical use. And it's not that they need to be in compassionate, the TCUP program, because it's this, or it's this with a little bit of THC. That's not going to make anybody high. It doesn't need to be overregulated, because overregulation means excess cost, and that drives people back into the black and gray markets.
So we're trying to straddle a recreational use versus a medicinal use in a lot of, at least in my mind. I don't want to walk into a store and see candy and chips and obviously marketed towards children and minors. No one wants to see that. Anyone in this room wants to see that. So drawing the line is going to be difficult, because we've been doing this for almost 3 hours, and I'm still not sure what we're talking about. Your chart was very helpful, but I think we got a long ways to go in understanding this. And again, I don't see minors going into a store and wanting that bottle of oil if it's not going to have more of a recreational impact on them, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you. This is mineral water, by the way.
It looks a lot like this.
Okay. Oh, Mr. Smithy has a question.
So which of those products in front of you has THC content, or,
That has a whole lot.
and what kind what form is it? Is it a Delta 8 or 9?
This has multiple forms. The front of the label has Delta 9 and HHC, which is a completely synthetic form. And I think if I hit the QR code, I'd pick up some more. I can't, I've looked at it before, but I can't remember which. This drink is 5 milligrams of THC and 10 milligrams of CBD. And like I said, when you take those together, CBD softens the intoxicating effect of THC. So I liken this to maybe a 6%, say, ABV beer or pint. My favorite sleep gummies, and I will fight to the death for them, has THC in it as well, but with 5 times as much CBD, back to that softening effect.
So when you say THC, what form of THC?
Delta 9, Delta 9.
Okay. And Delta 9 is usually not synthetic, right? It can be converted.
It can be converted from other cannabinoids,
Yeah.
which is what the bill calls synthetic and what my chart calls semi-synthetic or artificial, or it can be just extracted from the cannabis plant.
Okay. And in that case, it's a natural
Correct.
occurring, okay.
Yes, and then this CBD, CBN oil, because it is full spectrum, it's going to test positive for THC, but it has very small amounts in it. And the science and the strong, sort of consumer belief is that when you take a little THC with the CBD, it makes it work better and it makes it more effective.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Members, other questions? Ms. Hayes. Mr. Mack.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I really appreciate you being here, and your little cheat sheet is very informative. I know very little about this world on this stuff, but I think our original intent was, back whenever we did the compassionate use program, was for the non-intoxicating stuff to be on the market in a regulated form, if I remember correctly. But I appreciate your testimony today.
Okay.
Thanks for being here.
Okay. Members, further questions? Ms. Hayes? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Record shows Benjamin Meggs with representing Bayou City Hemp Company, and you are neutral on the bill, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Please proceed, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman King and members. I'm Ben Meggs, co-founder and CEO of Bayou City Hemp Company, testifying on HB 28 on behalf of the company. First, I want to sincerely thank Chairman King for his leadership and thoughtful approach in filing HB 28 and for recognizing the value of this growing industry and the millions of adult Texans who choose these products. House Bill 28 helps move Texas away from the dangers of an unregulated black market and toward a framework rooted in safety and accountability. Specifically, we agree with age-gating all products to 21 and up, requiring third-party testing by DEA-certified labs located in Texas, banning smokable hemp products, banning synthetics, implementing THC dosage caps, prohibiting marketing and or packaging that targets minors, and fully enforcing strong penalties for violations of these regulations. While we strongly support regulation, the bill as filed does present significant challenges to this industry and to ensuring access to legal hemp-based THC products for responsible adult use. We have provided to Chairman King suggestions that would strike the right balance between protecting children and ensuring that adults can enjoy THC products safely and responsibly. First, under the filed bill, we would not be able to manufacture many of the safe, rigorously tested products that we currently produce and sell in Texas and other states. Second, we believe Texas should regulate the retail sales of these low-dose THC products exactly how we regulate the sale of beer and wine in multiple types of retail locations, which are already trusted under Texas law to sell products to adults age 21 and up. Hemp products are providing safe alternatives for adults seeking relief or wellness without turning to alcohol. Asking them to enter a liquor store to access these alternatives not only discourages that choice, it harms both consumers and businesses. Finally, we encourage a more flexible approach to THC caps that encourages product innovation, meets the needs of consumers, and keeps inappropriate products out of this market. With a few key adjustments, HB 28 can be the national model. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Meggs. Mr. Phelan.
All right, you're from Texas, or
Yes,
you're
sir.
based in Texas, all right. How do you distribute your product? How do you get out to the, and where do you distribute it to?
Sure. So, I mean, we sell to distributors.
Give me an example of a distributor.
So Silver Eagle would be our largest distributor in Texas.
So a tier 3 model, okay.
It is. And so we distribute, we sell to them, and then they distribute to the retailers, whether that be convenience stores or bars and restaurants, liquor stores, or grocery stores for that matter.
But what's your product line?
We only produce and sell low-dose THC beverages and gummies.
How do you distribute your gummies?
It's the same way, to a lesser degree. I mean, beverages is what we mainly focus on, but we do make gummies as well.
Yeah. How long have you been around?
We started as soon as the Farm Bill passed 6 years ago.
And how do you maintain, I mean, I'm assuming you're here in front of this panel, you feel pretty confident that your product, that you deliver on what you say is in your product, correct? Or you wouldn't be here, or take that chance at least.
Absolutely. So, in 2019, my business partner and I, we took a leap of faith to jump into this industry. We built a GMP certified lab. We brought in PhD chemists. We have our own in-house testing capabilities. So we rigorously test everything. And further to that, we send it to a third-party lab as well.
So if Chief Dye tested your products, they would be dead on as far as the content.
And it's worth noting that a lot of the large retailers have very, very finite dosage discrepancies. So call it 10%, 20%. So we wouldn't be on shelf in some of these larger retailers if we couldn't hit that on the head.
Do the retailers demand to see your
Yes, sir.
results of your tests?
Absolutely.
All of them?
All of them.
Every single
every
place you
batch.
sell a product, that retailer asks for your certificate?
Well, yes, they do. I mean, we sell to the distributor, and of course, they absolutely look at everything. It's not easy to get the big distributors to jump onto this unless they feel very, very comfortable.
But you can't say that for your competitors?
I can't, no, I can only speak to my company.
Asked TABC earlier, do you produce the larger 750 milliliter, do you produce that?
We do.
Okay. How do other states, how do they manage that, or how do they regulate it?
Yeah, so, I mean, again, this is new territory. I mean, a lot of the states are moving towards where beer is sold. As the higher dose products or multi-serve products, you liken it to a liquor, right? On-premise mostly, and then in package stores.
And maybe this is a question for someone else on the panel asked earlier. What is the impact of mixing that product with alcohol? What does it do to the consumer?
So I don't have any medical or actual, real. I have anecdotal experience. We have one of the largest tap rooms in Texas. We've had beer on draft, right beside our THC on draft for 3+ years. We don't allow our bartenders to mix it at all, even though that's not the law today. We don't mix it in a prepackaged product. If somebody wants to go buy a beer and then have a THC drink, that's perfectly normal. But just like in alcohol, the bartenders can tell when someone's intoxicated just as much with THC as alcohol.
Are you the same as Bayou City Brewing?
Yes, sir.
Okay, y'all the same. All right. Susan seems to know a lot about this. What's the impact of mixing those two?
Please state your name one more time.
Susan Hayes, not a scientist, but I'll give you anecdotal evidence. Consuming alcohol and THC together has the tendency to make someone more impaired than if I just had 2 beers or 2 THC drinks. And then I will, be honest with the committee and say I know this from personal experience. And I've spoken to others, including, and this gets to the issue of driving under the influence, which is confounding to law enforcement because it's not as simple as alcohol. It's not a nice, straight, even slope up of how someone's intoxication increases. And because THC is a lipid or a fat, it hangs out in your body a lot longer. You can test positive for THC and be stone cold sober, and the more often someone uses THC, the longer it stays in their body. The government of Canada has done a lot of research on this issue. The Texas Transportation Institute is looking at it. But it's similar to what Mr. Meggs said about bartenders. When someone is impaired, you can tell they're impaired. Impaired driving is impaired driving, whether someone is drunk, high, or took a bunch of lorazepam or other prescription drug.
Members, questions of Mr. Maggs? Ben, I've got one.
Yes, sir.
So, located in Texas, you've been around 6 years. You haven't had any fines or issues. Everything's been legal.
Yes, sir.
As to what you know today. If you're banned, and say we go down the road that you're banned and you can no longer brew these drinks in Texas, and say you move to Louisiana, and you set up your brewery there, would you still be able to ship that product to Texas residents?
Yes, sir, we would. It's federally legal. We believe we would. Can't stop interstate commerce.
Understand. Mr. Smith?
What about, for instance, those other products? If we were to ban those, would you still be able to buy those?
Sure, absolutely. I mean, it's federally legal.
Okay.
It would really, sorry to interrupt, sir. It would really only keep us from being able to manufacture in Texas, and we'd have to move to, say, a place like Florida and manufacture.
And you would continue to do business, and if your customers in Texas wanted your product, you'd just ship it to them?
We don't typically operate around the law like that, but yes, in theory, we could. Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, theories are good. Okay. Members, other questions of Mr. Maggs? Seeing none. Record shows we have Andrea Steele representing the Texas Hemp Business Council and herself and against the bill. Is that correct?
Yes, thank you.
You have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Good morning, Chairman King, Vice Chair Hernandez, and members of the State Affairs Committee. Thank you for allowing us to speak today. I'm Andrea Steele, an attorney with the Banks Law Firm, testifying, as you said, on behalf of the Texas Hemp Business Council. I represent hemp businesses and have done so since the legalization in Texas. I currently serve as Vice Chair of Operations of the International Cannabis Bar Association, as well as co-chair of its Legislative Advisement Committee, and I serve as a Vice Chair of the American Bar Association's Cannabis Law and Policy Committee. And I also consult on hemp litigation nationwide. I did not bring prepared notes. I actually left them back at my seat, but I had some other notes I wanted to bring up based off the things that I've heard. So just to provide some clarity, because it's very clear there's a lot of confusion, and it's not just among you, it's among law enforcement, it's among consumers, it's among companies. But one of the first things is the difference between synthetic and semi-synthetic and naturals, and Susan brought this up, but I want to hit on the K2/spice predicament that we had back in the 2010s. One of the witnesses that spoke earlier talked about how potent those synthetic THCs are, those synthetic cannabinoids, that they are laboratory created, they were created for research purposes, they are they are dangerous, and they do bind much more readily to those CB receptors. Those are already illegal. Those are already banned federally, they're banned in Texas, and that is not the same thing that a lot of the rhetoric around the hemp industry and the consumable hemp industry would have you believe, but the derivatives that are on the market now that are operating within the realms of the law have other cannabinoids, as Susan said, but they are not synthetic.
Members, questions for Ms. Steele?
I wanted to touch on the
Ms. Steele,
intent issue
your
as
2
well.
minutes are up. I'm trying to find you off on here. Mr. Anchia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I took the hint. Ms. Steele, on this last issue that you wanted to visit, but I'd like to hear some more about that, please.
So the intent, earlier there was a question about the intent of the Farm Bill. And there's a lot of also rhetoric about nobody intended for this to happen. But the intent of the 2018 Farm Bill was specifically to expand into the consumable hemp market, to remove it from the Controlled Substance Act, and to see what the industry would come up with, specifically adding on consumables. And so what happened naturally, this was not by design, but because of the way that the law was drafted, you can't regulate, the plants do not listen to the law. The plants do what the plants do. But because of the way that the law is written, a lot of innovation took place that was able to explode in a market of consumable hemp products that fall within the definition of the law. And it's a supply and demand. I mean, it's very clear. This is not an issue just in Texas. This is an issue across the country. There is a huge market for these products. There is a huge demand for them, and there's a supply that's ready to meet it. And if you attempt to ban it, you're not going to be able to successfully do that. But as far as the intent going back, this is not a loophole. The intent was to explore the consumable hemp market and add that into an ability. When they went between the 2014 Farm Bill and 2018 Farm Bill, they specifically added language to allow for consumable hemp. The market did what the market naturally does, and the Texans and everybody else in the country has spoken very clearly that these are products that people want access to. And if the issue and the concerns are consumer safety, which those are valid concerns and they are issues, those can be addressed through reasonable regulations, not through government overreach.
Just quick question as a follow-up. So the size, I think we heard testimony earlier, and any of you can take this question. We heard testimony earlier that the size of the market today is $9 billion, and I imagine that is in the legal market, because it's kind of, most things are legal today. Is there a black market still, even in this environment? And how big is that black market, if you could quantify it?
I'm not able to quantify it, but I will tell you there's always going to be an illicit market for controlled substances or controlled substance-like things anyway. However, the $8 billion, sorry, I got distracted and got thrown off. The question is.
I think the testimony earlier was it's a $9 billion market?
$9 billion.
And I may have had that data point wrong. Anybody who wants to take, Susan, do you want to take a stab at the?
Yeah, I'm going to highlight you, there's a
Please say your name,
cannabis
please.
economist here named Robin Goldstein.
So
who
if you can
answered that
repeat your
question.
name.
So I'm sorry, Susan Hayes. I don't know the size of the black market, but there's a cannabis economist named Robin Goldstein who's signed up as a witness who can answer that.
I will direct my question to Dr. Goldstein.